Hey, what's
Hey,
up, everybody?
what's happening?
Welcome aboard. Greg was on here, but he's having some technical difficulties. Hopefully, he'll be right back on here in just a minute. We'd like to welcome everybody out tonight to the chat. We've already got 37 folks on here, man.
Yeah,
Just
I
starting up.
know.
We appreciate everyone being on
Yeah,
here. And tonight, we're going to have a great chat. We've got Randall Carter on here from Carter Hill Honeybees. And welcome aboard, Randall. Glad to have you here.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I thank y'all for having me. I've been looking forward to this opportunity for the few days since you first offered it to me. So, looking forward, and I hope we all have a good, positive night tonight and share some information.
I think it's going to be great. I just want to let y'all know
yeah,
that for those of you who don't know, Randall's channel is Carter Hill Honeybees. He'll probably post a link a couple of times tonight on here, but uh, Carter Hill Honeybees, it's a great channel, very similar, I think, in the purpose as what Craig does with Craig Branch, his channel with Sideline Beekeeper and Gus, as far as just trying to help folks out, trying to show what works for him, and he's not pushy at all, but he's just showing what's working for him. And he, like all of us, do things a little bit differently, but I've actually learned a couple of things from Randall just in the last few weeks watching his channel. And I felt like he would be really good to have on. And one of his most recent videos, if you go look at his channel, it's got a couple of hives that are way taller than he is. So I don't know how tall you are, Randall, but those hives are pretty impressive, man. Like 9 or 10 boxes on there, I think.
Well, I'm 6'1".
Oh my gosh.
oh my gosh.
So we'll talk about that a little bit later. That strategy, I've done a little bit of that in the past, and I've got some pretty impressive hives now, but I don't have any now that are like
Wow.
that. So, but before we get on, before we kind of dive into Randall's story, Brian, what do you got going on in your bee yard?
Well, what what's the number that I said that I would stay at? 10?
10 or 12. I know it was maybe those were the two numbers, or maybe it was 10. I don't know.
I'm over 10. So there's been a little we've got Dawn, Natalie's mom,
Uh-huh.
and Mike Berry have been egging at me on the facial book, and right there Jason too is saying 15, 15, and Craig might have right 12. I in a
I think your goal is 24, maybe 36.
No, I think it's been I
I
got the
think
first swarm April 22nd, so it's been, what is it, not even 3 weeks now. I've gone up 8. So my 3 is now 11, and I've said right there, I'm like, I'm done. No more. Just, another week and a half, I'm gonna have to start traveling. So I can't, it'd be nice. Hey, you said 20. That's funny. It'd be nice if I had the time that I could expand out like that. But I just, time wise, with me going to be going on the road, I'm not going to have time for it. But yeah, things are going good. I mean, I did the splits. Those queens are actually laying it up. Got 3 swarms that I've moved over there. So it's good.
yeah. Awesome.
So yeah, real good. Yeah. If you have
Good to,
11, you have 20.
yeah.
Jason, no.
Well,
Yeah.
it's hard, and Randall, I'm sure you'll attest to this. It's really almost impossible just to stop. I mean, because bees multiply, and if you don't, if you give them space, or if you don't, if you like, you can just end up with more than you want in a hurry. As long as they're growing up this time of the year, it's easy to do that. So you can double very, very quickly with good strong colonies. As far as I'm concerned, I haven't. I've just had so much going on, and I've done quite a few things in the last couple of weeks. I really haven't done a lot of video footage of them. I did shoot quite a bit of video on the 2nd of the month. Just kind of went through the different bee yards, peeked in on some different colonies, just did a few things. Just not really going through these long inspections I do sometimes. It was more just, hey, let's peek in and see what this one looks like. Here's a story on this hive, and I think I've probably got 10 or 15 colonies I went through very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got the clips on my computer, but I have not edited
Nice.
them yet, and so it's going to be a little behind and delayed if I get that out. But I just have got done so much and been so busy, I haven't shot a lot of footage. The recent video I did on the swarm catch, recent video I did on the swarm catch was actually one that that actually happened the 7th of April. And then I followed up 3 weeks later, right. I think the 30th of May was when I actually followed up on that. And so that was kind of a fun video, but I was an interesting video because the homeowner, I went there without the intention of even shooting a video, and it just kind of got kind of crazy. And so that's why I kind of cut into the footage after they were already in that hive butler or trying to get him in that thing. And I didn't really have much footage of it before because I wasn't going to do a video, but then the homeowner took a lot of footage and she took it in the vertical format. And so I kind of did that little split screen thing. And so that's why it was a little different than a lot of my videos, but it turned out okay, I think. And it was fun, and it is amazing. And I don't know, I think all of you would agree that it is unbelievable what a motivated swarm can do in such a very short period of time. So that's kind of where I'm at. My son went through with me. Saturday I started in Ozark, and then he helped me Monday. We went through and started putting queen excluders in these colonies, getting ready for a honey harvest that's going to be happening here in a couple of weeks. And so, I didn't have enough queen excluders, so I ordered some more from Hilco. I went ahead and ordered some stuff from them. I really like John up at Hilco. I like their business model. Anything I can get from them or from some of these smaller companies that I can, I'm going to try and start using them. That's kind of my goal now. Just to help give them a boost. And I'm appreciative. He had that stuff shipped out by 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock the next morning. It was, I ordered it that afternoon. The previous afternoon, I got the shipping information the next morning. So,
one thing I forgot to say. So, and well, the one here below me, I wanted to make sure I edited some Nature's Image Farm. And I had fun doing the one from today, the top bar hive.
Yeah, man.
That was
a classic video.
I was cracking up with that. But over Monday and Tuesday when I checked my colonies and did the splits and all that stuff just to get ready for when I got the queens, Monday when I went over, and I always do my little intro and all right, hey, here's what we're going to look at. And I had just said, because the girls were real active, and I had just said, as a beekeeper, to stand in your apiary and just kind of listen, I just enjoy that. I could not have timed this. I didn't pay nobody to release them. A swarm took off behind me.
Oh, wow.
So right literally in the video, you could see them start, and I heard it. And, they went across the street. So, I just thought, whatever. But I got that I want to try and get some nice footage of. I actually, during the inspection also on one of my other colonies, I caught a virgin queen emerging out. So there were a couple unique things that I was able to get on camera the other day that I want to make sure that I focus in on those so that people get to see that stuff.
It's fun, man. It's fun how that happens in the bee yard. Random stuff happens. I did want to answer this question real quick from Russell, and then we'll move over to Greg. I've got a perfect question here to segue into Greg here for a second. But have I harvested any honey? No, I have not, Russell, but we are the plan is to harvest the 20th and 21st, which is next weekend, not this coming weekend, but next weekend. We've got our privet right now down here. Now, I think I talked to Randall a little bit. His is just getting started up there, but ours is basically over, and we're starting to get ready for tallow here. We're kind of in that little lull in between. We do have some stuff coming. The bees are happy. They're busy, but we have a little mini dearth kind of happening right now, but that's going to change very quickly. So I'm going to try and time it right as that tallow is starting to kick in a little bit. So maybe the bees won't be too crazy, but and then we'll have a nice flow. That's our biggest flow down here typically. So here's the question, Greg. I think you might have an answer to this. And what we're doing now is we're kind of going around and seeing what's going on with each of you in the bee yard. I know you've got some things going on right now, but here's the question.
Who sells good 1 gallon bucket feeders?
Oh.
That is a good question. Can you guys hear me okay? My internet is barely hanging in there like a whisker and a biscuit.
We got you, man. Loud and clear. You sound great, actually.
Okay. I can't help how I look. I was born that way, but at least I can put a microphone in front of me where you can hear me. A good 1 gallon bucket feeder. Well, we sell 1 gallon bucket feeders, but the trouble is the shipping is astronomical to ship anybody them anywhere. We prefer folks to come pick up the bucket feeders from the farm here in Zanesville. If you're not in or near Ohio, the good news is we have a video on our YouTube channel on how you can build your own. Some folks can source buckets locally at Lowe's. They can go to Walmart and get frosting buckets. There's lots of ways to get buckets, and those are handy. I like to go and get mine from Industrial Container. I usually get them shipped by the pallet, and shipping is astronomical now. It's upwards of about $850 to have an entire pallet shipped, which is getting to be just absolutely ridiculous. If you're interested in bucket feeders, we sell them, we make them, we'll even ship them to you. The trouble is the shipping is usually pretty expensive. It's usually about $3 to $4 a bucket if you're putting like 10 in a box. So it gets to be expensive. But more importantly, the buckets are great. The trick is the plug and how we use the plug. And that's something you can check out our video. We're actually going to do an update video. There's some new cool things that we can do with them. So the trick is the plug, how you cut the hole in the plug, the number of holes that actually go in the plug. The cool thing about the buckets is whether you want to feed a one frame split or you want to feed triple deeps, you can do it with a bucket and you can adjust the plug to suit your flow. That's the good thing about the buckets. And they don't drown and kill bees like some of the mesh screen ones can. Not that they always do, but that I've used them. I've drowned bees. That's one flow for all. And I think if you're going to use a bucket or a top feeder, you want to be able to tune that in to the size colony you're feeding. Anyways, I could go on all night long about bucket feeders, but I guarantee you everyone's not here to hear about bucket feeders. They want to hear more about Mr. Randall Carter.
Well, tell us what's going on with your bees right now, briefly.
Okay.
You got like 500 things going on, and then we'll move on. We'll find out more about Randall.
Well, I just briefly wrapped up getting all of my drawn out combs on there. I started adding a little foundation on some. I just went back and shook my bees down and added my queen excluders just now. This is the second year I've used my queen excluders. And this is the first spring I've done a spring mite treatment after figuring out after a couple of years that 2 treatments are not good enough for me. So that was a nervous time for me, which product to pick and timing of it and all of it. But it worked out good. I'm glad I've done it. The bees recovered nicely and they're really clean right now.
So Randall, tell us your story as far as your beekeeping history, how you got into it, and kind of where you're at now, what your goals are. Take a couple minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us some background.
Okay. Well, my first exposure to honeybees was when I was less than 10 years old. My grandfather had bees, and when he got old enough and he quit, he kind of left them to me. I was probably 13 or 14, and that's about the time tracheal mites come in, and I had no clue or nothing about that, and they got wiped out. So you fast forward to about 2007, and the bug hit me again, and I got into it. My dad had 4 hives down here and some junk equipment, and I bought some brand new equipment, transplanted them in like February or March of that year, and got started with those 4 colonies. And then I bought some package swarms on over in the summer, and I don't remember how many it was, but I think I went into the first winter with somewhere around 10 or 12 colonies. And I've just kind of progressed through the years and built up, and I tried no treatment and stuff. And my goal for a long time was to get 50 production colonies and 20 colonies that I could use to make bees and try to sell nukes. And I've never been able to reach that goal. So now that I'm trying to figure out how to treat properly and stuff, so I'm working towards that goal now. And I think I'm going to have success with it now. So my goal is to kind of get somewhere in 70 to 100 colonies and just see what happens, because I still do a full-time job, and it'll be, just whatever time will allow me to do. So that's kind of where I'm looking at right now. But I do want to get into selling bees and rearing some queens and stuff. I want to learn it. I'm actually going to do my first attempt at that this year. So I'm about a week or so away from doing that.
Nice.
Deal.
I don't know. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Bruce.
You go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, I don't know how, like Randall, you say you want to keep 70 to 100, and you have your job, and even like with the number of colonies you have now, And it's like Bruce, he's got Bruce. I don't know. He probably has over 100 colonies now, works a full-time job. I don't know how you all do it.
It's what's your answer to that question, Randall? How do you do that? How do you manage the time?
Well, I had to learn a lot of shortcut techniques that are you, you make brief observations, but crucial, like learning to read the entrance and stuff. And I kind of learned I relied a lot on that, or just the basic the way the bees are working and stuff. And that I learned to kind of assess them that way. And I try to do a lot of stuff through the week. Sometimes I may get behind. I have to take a half a day off of work or something, use vacation time. But it's just a kind of a fine line. You learn to do it as you get into it. It's a little harder, but as you go along, you kind of adapt and learn to do things quicker and smarter to a degree.
Yeah. My problem that I run into, it's just like the other day when I go over and you see certain things and I just want to sit there and stare at the frame. And if I had, even I think if I ended up with 50, I couldn't sit there and stare at a frame, like I do now. I enjoy that too much. And it's like, I got a chair that I keep right next to, it's right in the apiary on the one side. And there's times where I'll just walk over and I'll sit for 20 or 30 minutes before I even touch them. And I'm just watching them fly. So
yeah,
that's my problem.
It's amazing, man. It's I'm kind of the same way. I have, when I got to get stuff done, I just get it done. And like Randall said, sometimes you just got to peek in the top of the colony and see how strong they look. Sometimes you just got to, look at the hive entrance and there's some things you can do to be quick and efficient. Like when you're going through the colonies, if you just find eggs, there's a queen, things like that. But then every once in a while, if it's not quite as busy, if everything's kind of set up, I'll just take my time and really go through and do a thorough inspection and just kind of lose myself in it because it's therapy for me. And I don't know, Randall, if you ever get a chance to do that, but that's one thing I like to do is just kind of enjoy the moment sometimes and not be in such a hurry to get everything done.
Yeah, I actually took a week of vacation last week, and I got to do some of that for the first time in several months. So, and I took some time to slow down and enjoy some of my bees last week.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hey, Michelle, I really appreciate that super chat. Thank you so much for
Randall. One of the tricky things I think we all face as we're trying to grow to that whatever next level that we think we want to be. As you mentioned earlier, you got to find ways to save time in the bee yard. You have to find ways to be way more efficient with every stroke of the hive tool, every footstep. You got to get really smart with the resources that you have that you allocate to grow the bee yard. Find ways to cash flow the bee yard as you kind of move forward. You got to learn and find all these tricks. One of those ways is kind of doing some things that not a lot of folks do. And I was actually thinking about you today. We're out in the bee yard, and I've got this beautiful breeder colony that I'm breeding off of, and it's from one of Bob Benny's breeder daughters, and it's just this beautiful colony. I've made so many queens off it, and I got distracted, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and I got everything set up to graft, and I do that like Bob does, and I use a double screen board, and I kind of get them flipped on top. Well, the colony underneath had a little bit of eggs in it, and of course, there's no queen; they're separated, and they put these beautiful, beautiful cells on there. So what do? I let them go just a little bit longer, and let that colony make swarm cells that are from this breeder daughter. And I got to thinking, man, I kind of zoned out for a minute, and I'm thinking, if there ever was the most perfect queen cell, or if you could make the most perfect queen off of a breeder, wouldn't it be the one that the bees make themselves in that exact situation? So I was thinking about I watched your video, and using queen cells to make splits and using queen cells to make queens is one of the most underutilized techniques that really lead to some of the most fantastic queens that you ever will see. So Randall, I kind of wondered what your thoughts were on using cells in your apiary to kind of grow, the benefit and what limitations that you find that you see with that approach?
I think it works very well. The problem I have is tearing them up. You know, before you know they're there, a lot of times they put them in between your boxes, so that can be frustrating. Sometimes I feel like I tear up the best ones, but I think overall it works very well to do it. I've done it several times over the years. I actually caught one of my nukes this year, and I haven't checked them yet, but I took a double stacked nuke and made 3 additional nukes out of it, plus the queen and the original colony still there. But I think it's definitely a good way to go.
It seems like you get into these little. I think you mentioned that you were going to get into. Have you grafted before, or you're getting into grafting this year?
I've not grafted before. We did a little a class a couple years ago, and I grafted in it, and I got 2 out of 5 to take. I've got everything here, and the reason I'm not grafted yet is because I took all my strongest colonies to utilize them for honey production. My weakest colonies I've got here, I'm having to kind of wait for them to build up to make a good cell builder.
I got you.
That's kind of what's holding me back right now.
Yeah.
I'm hoping within a week or 2 I'll be able to start. And I want to split most of my colonies right after harvest. That's usually when I try to split.
Got a comment right here from the Texas beekeeper. I like this. My real job is work. Beekeeping, even though it's becoming a lot of work, is relaxing.
Yeah.
And I feel that exactly. I mean, my actual physical job, physically, it's not as taxing as beekeeping, but I say relaxing. It is work, but mentally it's relaxing for me. I really enjoy being out there working with the bees.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, before we move on, Greg, tell us, you said you were in your nuke yard earlier. What are you doing out there in the nuke yard?
Well, as you guys are talking, I'm thinking of all the things like, yeah, man, sometimes it definitely is relaxing. But I feel like every year I try to get smarter and pull things together to where everything's on point, and boom and boom and boom. This week up here in Ohio, we're in East Central Ohio. For a point of reference, all of the crab apples have already blossomed and have gone. The dogwoods are blossomed. The wild cherry are going to explode tomorrow. On the ground, we've got asters. What else? Some just dandelions are in their second flush. They already have gone to seed for the first round. There's wild carrot. It is an absolute smorgasbord.
Yep.
And you can almost do no wrong. The problem with that is this is probably the biggest week of the entire beekeeping year is this week right now, because this is that time when those primary swarms are being thrown, and if you've already made splits and those rascals are getting ready to swarm, if you're not on top of that, it is just an absolute nightmare. So what I was supposed to do today was just go ahead and make these easy splits and get these boxes ready and get all these grafts going and go ahead and get my next round in the cell builder and get 100 or 120 cell. And I get out there, and if he's listening, I had Roy Adams stopped out today and put a bunch of frames together for us, and we had the bee inspector out today. So there's a lot of things kind of going all at once, and you have a plan. And I sit down and I try to have my coffee and think it through, and then don't overthink it, and then just boom, get going. And it was just chasing one thing after another. Well, I ended up going through splitting out the original nukes because they're already jamming, putting cells on. I'm splitting the nukes into cells, putting those cells in boxes to run out to split those. And it's chasing one thing after another. I took a video. I hope it's worth watching, because I'm going through these boxes and I hear chirp, 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 chirp. And if any of y'all have heard that in a queen yard or a nuke yard, you're thinking, oh no. So I get in there, I open up this box, and here's this queen, and she is just a chirping away, and she's sitting there on the comb, and I've got video, and she's pumping. As she's chirping, she's pumping, and she's doing it all over the place. And I'm trying to think, there's got to be some cells in here. I look around, I found 2 cells, and I went ahead and smushed them. And I'm literally catching a swarm right in the midst of these virgins hatching, and then mama and the bees flying off. I'm scrambling now, right? So I'm going through the box. Well, I end up finding another cell on another frame that I totally missed. I went to go pull it off just to look at it. As I pull this cell off the frame, this completely developed brown butt starts wiggling out of the cell. She comes out of the cell backwards and then starts running around the frame. Here's the cool thing. As soon as that virgin jumped backwards out of that cell, the other virgin, a frame over, started chirping, chirp, 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 chirp. And they were trying to find each other. In that situation, if you put that all back together, there's still a really good chance that swarm, half of those bees are going to leave. Wherever mama is at, they're going to go. So I just split the tar out of that thing, made 4 splits. And then today, they're all in their place. Nobody left. There's no bees in trees. So the name of the game was go in there, graft, make some conservative splits, get those ready to drop cells and on, and you end up chasing your tail. The good news is, the short story is, I wasn't catching my bees out of trees, so I think we're winning.
That's great. Yeah, it's this year I had some swarms early. I caught most of them, and it really has slowed down. Now, Randall, I don't think we ever asked where you're located at. Tell us where you're located.
I'm about halfway between Birmingham, Alabama, and Memphis, or Tupelo, Mississippi, and right outside of a small town called Winfield.
Okay. And so that's, and you were telling me that you guys were a little behind where some of us are. I mean, you're a little behind even people north of you a little bit. Is that something that you've noticed with you're just starting privet now, and we're just, a few hundred miles south of you, and we're basically done with it. So,
yeah, I've noticed in the last couple of years, it's almost like, if you can imagine like on a weather map or something, like a little finger that kind of comes down in here, northwest Alabama. It seems like it's a little bit behind, like areas just to the east and up towards Huntsville. But Tuscaloosa is just like 52, 53 miles south of me, and there's 2 weeks difference in swarm time here. I've noticed that consistently over the last 4 or 5 years.
You see this hat right here? Roll Tide.
I thought that was an Atlanta Braves hat.
Yeah, I thought it was a Braves hat. Hey, Bruce,
let's do it. I see you got it ready there. For people Jason was asking about the piping. We got a little video here I did last year on some bees that were piping.
That's pretty cool.
Isn't that wild?
They
just went after it. They went after it. Those were some queens I got late last summer from Lappy's Bee Supply, and man, they just put on a show. I think I got 16 of them, and I don't think I'd even opened the box up there. I just heard them piping, and so I stuck my little mic up to it, and they just talked to each other. So Jason was wondering if they pipe, and that's what they sound like. And we were talking last week a little bit about what the purpose of that is. It's kind of like a battle cry. I'm not sure if we all know exactly what that means, but they definitely will chat and talk and pipe. And I've gotten some queens that I've ordered in the mail that were pretty quiet. And then I've had some that were like that. They just talk to each other the whole time. And so it's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
So gosh, this thing we got 83 folks on here. It's growing as we speak. And
Bruce, did I miss earlier? And if I did, I'm sorry. I wonder if Randall could maybe talk a little bit about what his what you do in your yard. Are you raising honey? Are you raising bees or queens? What is your kind of overall operation look like? What are your goals in the bee yard, and then also moving forward?
Well, I've started out doing honey. That's what my main focus has been. And during my no treatment years, I had to replace my losses. I've done a lot of swarm trapping, and I had to get and keep about 25 nukes down here to replenish my losses every year. But I eventually want to keep those bees and just dedicate them mostly to rearing bees, selling nukes and stuff in the future. But I also want to get about 50 honey production colonies. I've got plenty of places I can put bees once I get the numbers that I need to put there. I got several people that would love to have bees on their property now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where did that treatment-free road lead you?
It led to a lot of frustration and disappointment, and Unfortunately, it took me about 10 years to figure out that it was not going to work. I kept waiting on the bees to evolve a resistance to it, and it just never come. So the only way I survived as a beekeeper was through swarm trapping and keeping those nukes available, because I had them down there to swarm. I was catching 30 and 40 swarms a year sometimes, and that's how I was replenishing my losses. And I would usually lose about 20 to 25 of my honey production colonies every year.
Now, you mentioned earlier that this year you're doing some more, that you had a little different approach with the mite control as far as this spring. Can you expound? You did do some videos on that. I saw at least one. I think I saw one recently you did on that. Kind of tell us what your philosophy is on the mite control, what you're doing with that.
Okay, I've pretty much have focused a lot on mite control the last 2 years. So I started out with ApiGuard right after honey harvest. I did a mite wash before and then after, and when that worked, that was real good. And then that winter, I done the oxalic acid vapor like most everybody does in December. I done it 3 times a week apart. And I didn't do any washes right after that, because I didn't know what washing winter bees would do. I didn't want to do that, so I waited about the 1st of March and washed 5 or 6, and there was zeros and ones. But what really got my attention is right after the honey flow, my mite count was almost as high as it was the year before, right before my first ever treatment. So that year, I've done a lot of studying on that since then. I've used Randy Oliver's mite model a lot, and it's a great tool in my opinion that you can kind of visualize what's going on. So I decided that 2 treatments are not good enough, so I tried to figure out what option I wanted to use this spring, and I wound up going with Formic Pro for a couple of reasons. I wanted that quick knockdown. I wanted to catch it right after spring turnover once the winter bees was pretty much gone. And I thought, based on, I kind of had this guess at the house, people talk about it shuts your queen down or whatever. I thought it might assist a little bit with swarm control. And from after I did it did seem like it did shut the queens down 2 or 3 days. So I do think that was a benefit. That would be, if you factor in all the natural loss from your bees, the natural die-off per day, and then a couple of days without the queen laying, that's basically about 2 frames of brood that you pulled out, but you didn't pull out, if that makes sense. So, so it was kind of tricky to time that. But after I come back and done the washes, then I was concerned about, how the bees going to recover. But once the queen started laying again, they really recovered nicely, and very pleased with the brood pattern I'm seeing now. But so I may try a different thing in a year or 2 or something, but I will definitely use that product again. Now, I did have some queen losses, but it was all in weak colonies. I can't say that it was the fault of that. And I've had a lot of queen losses, and that's another reason for some reason I'm having seem like above normal queen losses. That's my big thing right now, and that may be with you guys too. I'm not sure, but I just wonder if there is enough virus load left in the colonies because of the rapid expansion of mites during this time right now when we're in the nectar flow, if somehow that's affecting the quality and quantity of drones coming, the first ones that are raised, or something that are mating with these queens or something, or maybe there's a high mite load that somehow is getting transmitted to the queen. I don't know any way to prove it, but I'm going to get more aggressive with it and see if I can bring those queen losses down in late winter and spring, because that's the only way I know to approach it. I don't have the amount of colonies it would probably take to actually test that.
Have you seen a vibrancy difference after you started treating the bees? Have you noticed any just kind of overall characteristic or performance change since you started treating?
Yeah, especially in the first year I treated in the fall. They look like bees you would see in April or May during the middle of the nectar flow. I've never seen them work as good as they did in the fall.
Yeah.
And something else I've noticed too is, I don't know if others have noticed this, but I've noticed that the amount of small hive beetles I see in my colony are drastically reduced since I've got my mite levels down. I don't see near as many as I used to, and it kind of makes me suspect that, and I can't prove this in any way, but it kind of looks to me like that small hive beetle numbers are kind of tied to a high mite load, if that makes sense. A couple of years ago, I caught a swarm that absconded, and I happened to catch it right after it absconded. But for 2 or 3 days prior to that, that thing was just loaded with small hive beetles, and then a colony next to it had some out there on a pine cone laying on the block. And
Yeah.
So that's kind of what gave me that idea. And I don't, like I say, I can't prove that, but I've noticed a dramatic reduction in small hive beetles in my colonies overall.
Well, I tend to think, and last year I had I call it a Beemageddon, man. It was awful. I had lost about 40 to 50 colonies late in the year after the honey flow. Hey, thanks, Jason, for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Means a lot to get for y'all to do that. I appreciate it. But I think I attributed it to 3 things. Number one, what I really think happened was we had such a good flow last year with the tallow. Really everything. Privet was good, tallow was good, and then when the cotton rolled around, everything was good last year. Goldenrod was good, and so. But right about the time we harvested that second harvest, late June, early July, I started noticing a few that were dying out as we pulled the honey. I'm like, well, I got a couple losses. That's no big deal. And so I was so exhausted after the honey that I just left them alone for a couple of weeks. Was just burned out, tired, and just exhausted. We had a big harvest last year. Went back out, started checking on them. I had dead outs everywhere, hive beetles, slime everywhere. So I think my theory, what I'm getting at is, I think it was 3 things. I think it was 3 things. Number one, I think I had some weak queens. I think that some of them were getting old and they were just tired and worn out. Number 2, I think that some of those colonies got honey bound, so the queens didn't have a place to lay. So right when that mite population probably and the hive beetle population was growing, the bee population was going down. And then I think I probably did have some issues with mites. I didn't do any real checks on them. I just jumped into high gear trying to eliminate, the mites, trying to eliminate mites and beetles, and just beetle traps, beetle towels, just everything I could think to do. And I think I saved a lot of colonies, but I still lost probably at least a third, if not more, of what I had at that point in time. And so I do believe that, yes, I think the key to hive beetle control, a lot of it is just a good, strong colony, which is what you're saying. If you don't have mites, if you don't have sick bees, they're going to be more likely to be able to control the beetles. But I do know that a lot of it's related to population too. Like if the bees can't cover, if they can't defend the pollen, if they can't defend the honey, if they can't keep the beetles corralled, then those beetles can get out of control. As we all know, if you've experienced it, when those larvae take over and that hive fills up with what looks like maggots, it's one of the nastiest things that and this is the nastiest thing in beekeeping. I mean, wax moths are kind of gross, but hive beetles are just
the
nasty.
worst. Absolutely nasty.
And there's a guy here in Alabama. He's I think, I think he's probably the biggest, or one of the biggest, probably the biggest commercial beekeeper in the state of Alabama. There's not a lot of true commercial beekeepers here in the state of Alabama that I know of, but he really strongly believes, I think, the hive beetles is one of the biggest issues with disease and everything. There's dirty and filthy and nasty. Mites are an issue, but hive beetles play a huge role too. And I don't know, we could debate all day about whether or not they carry viruses and things like that into the bees, but they're just nasty.
Well, now Brian's going to say it. Exactly.
We had Bruce, we haven't been doing this long enough for you to forget our guests. We had Humberto, and we asked that question, and he said yes.
Yeah, I think I remember going back and watching that and seeing him talk about
There's
that.
several viral strains that not only that, but bacterial strains that the hive beetles are able to transmit.
Yep.
What they don't know is what extent that impact is playing, but they are able to transfer all these different viruses. What is the let's see, what is the real name for deformed wing virus?
Shriveled. What it is? That's just what they call it. I don't know what the real name for it is, but
there's like you have acute bee paralysis, parasitic mite syndrome, deformed wing virus. Anyways, they've actually found that they're able to transmit And then they've also are finding that there are, I guess it's like a communicable disease where the bees they're able to, the viral loads are being transmitted from the nectar itself that another pollinator is depositing and the bee is picking up, or can be transmitted from other honeybees that are working the same forage. That gets to be, pretty darn challenging to kind of figure out. But if you think about honeybees, well, think about really any insect in general. They're opportunists. That's how they survive. So if you look at if we do have a mite issue coming in, and those viral strains are affecting the neurological, the communication, the forage finding and reporting back, all those communications, if that's affecting the bees, if as the mite loads kind of increase, the bees are being stressed, they're able to defend the colony even less. Now you have a colony that, and you guys have probably seen it, you open up a colony sometimes before you even do a wash, you learn, like Randall said earlier, you learn to read the bees, the entrance. You learn to actually read the frames and watch how the bees are moving, the direction they're moving. How are they skittery? Are they doing this? You can really tell when they're agitated, and a lot of times you can see right away there is something going on with this colony. A lot of times you'll find it is mites, but the hive beetles are also opportunists, and they can pick up and sense on a colony that has all this extra protein and all these resources that they're not really able to defend. They start moving in. And it's just one more stressor, one more thing that adds up. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. It seems like some of those cuts seem like gouges, when it comes to the bees. But that's just the reason I asked that question, Randall, earlier is it seems like after treatments and you get those colonies as squeaky clean as you can, there is just I don't really have the words to express it, but they have this healthy, positive vibrancy to the colony where they are just dedicated. They look like everything is just jamming and moving like it should, versus times where they are really stressed. You can just kind of feel that negativity all in the hive, in the box. It's a weird kind of a thing.
Let me, there's a comment here that kind of, whoops, that's not the right one. I wanted to find the one from Grammys about the, here I go, right here. Says she's trying peppermints in the boxes. Have you heard of this, Randall? It's kind of a new thing that's kind of making the circuit on YouTube, trying peppermints for the beetle control.
I heard about that probably about a week ago. I did. I can't remember whose video I seen it on, but I did see it.
Earl.
So we've got Earl, the hillbilly beekeeper. I'm not sure if he's on here tonight. We also have Bob Walker from Walker Bee Ranch and some others. And I've actually tried it a little bit now. The truth is that down here, and then Grammy midwife, that's Lisa. She lives up in Ozark, which I have some bees in Ozark, Alabama here. And I have never met Lisa. I need to meet her one of these days. But what I did with the number of colonies I have, when I actually talked to Earl about it. Earl's kind of the guy that got this wave rolled a little bit. And I said, man, what do you do? He said, well, you put a peppermint in each corner of each box. So now you multiply 150 times 2 to 3 boxes. And you figure out how many dang peppermints does. And then he says you need to do it every week. So I'm like, well, that's just impossible. I can't do that. So what I did was I went through a couple of my bee yards. I put it in every box the first time. And then up in Ozark, particularly, which is one of my worst hive beetle yards, I put it in whichever boxes I'm working. Like if it's the top box, I put them in the top. If I break it down 2 or 3 boxes down, I put it in each box. I've done that 1 or 2 more times. And I'll be honest, now those bees, you go back a couple hours later and they are sucking that peppermint down. It's kind of wild. I don't know, Brian, if you've seen it, or Greg, if you've done it. They take their little tongue, or is it proboscis? Is that how they say it? And they just start, they eat away at it, and it's got little streaks in it. And then the peppermint's gone pretty quickly. But I will say in Ozark, and it's still early in the year, so I want to see how it looks in July and August. But right now I haven't seen as many. And so I think it's going to be, and I haven't been able to do it consistently every week. I just can't do that. But it has, I'm going to say I think it may have knocked them back some. So I'm going to give it a thumbs up right now. But it is a lot of work to try and do that.
You saw my video, and so Randall, I have one of those polystyrene hives, and the inner cover on that, it's just like a clear plastic piece with, like ventilation slits through it. And early in the year, I'm talking early, this was March or so in Ohio, where we were still having snow here and there. The bees were, if you look at the top of the frame where that plastic inner cover was sitting flush on them, the bees were herding the small hive beetles up onto there and they couldn't get to them. Well, when I opened it up, I saw, I mean, I had to have had 30 or 40 small hive beetle all up in there. And that, for me, that's the most I've ever seen. Well, I tried this peppermint deal. I put it in each corner, and it's been 2 or 3, well, probably about 3 weeks that I've been doing that now, 4 weeks. And the other day, I think I saw 1 or 2. That was it in that colony. Now, the poly, they'll have as compared to wood, they kind of get some other little cracks and things in there that just are not normal just because they're a polystyrene setup. So I think that kind of, that was in favor of the small hive beetle, just giving them some places where they can hide out. But I mean, my numbers from where they were, just throwing in peppermint candies, I can honestly say that I've seen a difference.
Well, cool. So that might be another tool in your toolbox there to try out sometime, Randall. I'd be curious to see what you thought about it, and just play with it. And if you got any questions, we can kind of talk about it or whatever, share the ideas back and forth.
Okay, that's something I'll have to try out. I honestly don't see many hive beetles, and something I started doing a couple of years ago. I think that I noticed right away that helped is I just simply run my inner cover deep side down all the time. And that way the bees can get up in there and police above the frame. So that helped a lot for me too. But I'll try that peppermint candy.
Hey, Bruce, you got me thinking. I got home a couple of days ago, and I go up to my computer, and I found, I don't know how big this thing was, a 5-pound bag of peppermints in front on my thing here, and I'm thinking, what in the world? And I asked my wife, I said, where did these come from? She goes, oh, I listened to your live chat. You need to put these in your hives. So Earl Dooley, the hillbilly beekeeper, man, you got my wife cracking down on me about these hive beetles, and she bought this big jumbo size thing. But as we're talking, like Bruce, we run a few colonies where it's going to make it challenging to put those peppermints in. But I was just thinking as you guys were talking, what if, well, the thing is, I've got 7 kids, so I have all the kids unwrap all of the peppermints, right? And then what if I put them in a big stock pot with just a little bit of hot water, and then we make a spray, and then just spray the corners of the box with the sugar water. Now when I'm getting in there, we just boom, boom, zap, 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 let the bees clean it up, work it around, see what kind of results we get. Now we're talking about, okay, the peppermint oil itself, if we could find a way to apply that, if it truly works, I mean, hey, I don't care if I have to run around and do a rain dance 3 times a week and put a feather in my cap and to keep the hive beetles away, believe me, I'm going to do it. Brian, if I have to guzzle hive alive to keep them hive beetles away, buddy, I'm going to do it. Our bee inspector was out today, and he just loved the new setup and said, this ridge is perfect because apparently, I didn't know this, hive beetles like low ground, and they like low, dark, and moist ground. Now, over at the other farm, that entire hillside was spring fed, and it was always wet and nasty. At the new place, where I'm on the very top of a ridge, at the highest point you can see the whole valley. So I'm wondering if that's going to help. However, I've got peppermints on standby. I'm thinking about this oil spray now. But thanks to Earl Dooley, the hillbilly beekeeper, check his channel out.
He's here.
Is he in here?
He's
there
here,
he is.
yeah.
There he is.
Earl,
Hey,
you might be saving more hives than you could ever in your life imagine. So I want to say thanks to Earl for getting this ideas going. That's the fun thing about these communities, guys, is someone is not too shy to throw an idea out there, regardless of what people are going to say or think about it. And then someone tries it and they get the result. Somebody tries it, they get the result. Now we can info share and just start, trying to all do better. The thing to think about is you would automatically assume that feral bees don't have problems with all these kind of things. But I've told the story once. I brought home a bee tree, the entire bee tree, and I set it up here. And that entire hive absconded. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with these bees? Why are these feral magic wild bees absconding? After they left, I looked down in that cavity. There was a 5-gallon bucket worth of small hive beetle larvae in that tree. They were in that tree when I brought them, and then I brought that whole mess to my yard. It's just an interesting thing to think about. Is just because you catch a swarm or the bees come out of a tree doesn't necessarily mean that they're the healthiest, most perfect specimen of Apis mellifera.
Wow.
How many peppermints would I need to fix that bee tree, Bruce?
I don't know.
Wow.
Hey, I think we need to put a word of caution out there. I think it's possible to, I don't know, we got to be careful we don't overdo it with the peppermint. If you put too much in there, it might run the bees out, kind of like menthol and other type of things might do. So I don't know. Those would be some interesting experiments for people to try, but I think Earl's got a thing going here.
You won't have mosquitoes.
What's that?
You won't have mosquitoes in the bee yard, I don't think.
Well, I hope not. Yeah, mosquitoes and hive beetles are just the worst. But so we got a couple things. We're coming up on an hour here. Number one, earlier today, Randall, Jason Crook from Bohemia Bees called me, and I think he also called Greg as well. He had an interesting thing happen at his bee yard. I guess he's out working bees or whatever today. And so he posed a question to me. We talked about a couple of theories of what may have been happening. Now, Jason's been keeping bees for a long time. We had him on here one time early in the stream team. Several weeks ago, we had him on here and had a great live chat with him. And his channel is Bohemia Bees.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked him to go ahead and make a video and ask the question. And so the video is, I think, a little bit over a minute long, maybe a couple minutes long, but it's a really interesting thing to happen. And what I'd like to do is watch that video. And then if we could each come up with some ideas, if there's anybody out there in the comments that have an idea of what to happen, we'll kind of discuss this for just a few minutes. And then we got something we're going to try and do within the next few minutes as well. So go ahead and hit it, Brian.
Hey, Jason from Bohemia Bees. I figured I'd send in a video question rather than putting something in the chat. Really excited about seeing what your thoughts are on this. As you know, I've been beekeeping for many years, and I think I see everything, but then again, I come out and I see something I've never seen before. So my question would be, today, I was actually out up towards my house, which you can see is way in the back there, and there's a farm field behind me, way back here. And I've been around when there's been swarms in my apiary. I've been around for years, seeing swarms, been in the middle of swarms, and I definitely know what a swarm looks like. However, today, I was getting in my truck up by my house, and there's this, what appeared to be a ball of bees, maybe a few hundred, I'm not really sure, 50 to 100, I'm not really sure how many, definitely not the size of a normal swarm. It was all kind of in a flurry off the roof of my house. And as you can see, the weather here today is a little cloudy, overcast, a lot of wind, really not conducive for what I would define as a swarming weather. But you never know, right? Bees always surprise me. So above that house, there was a small cloud of bees that seemed to be kind of in a flurry that were shooting straight across my head, really over into the field behind me. Didn't look like a swarm, didn't look like they were landing on anything or gathering on anything. I kind of tried to see if I could follow where they went, but they just took off. Was that a swarm, or was that something else? Talking to Bruce earlier, we talked about maybe being a few other different options. So before I put any suggestions out there on what I think it is, we'll put it out to the audience, put it out to everyone else. What do you all think it is? There can be a lot of different possibilities, but I figured I'd send in the question, and hopefully I didn't take too much time asking the question. So thanks, everyone. Let me know what you think. Hey.
What a great format. I like that format. That's cool.
So what do you guys think about that? So my understanding from what Jason told me from the question there is it's a very, very small little cluster of bees, just not as big as normal swarm, and just kind of jetting almost like a comet across the yard. It wasn't like it wasn't acting really like a swarm, not as big as a typical swarm, even a cast swarm. What do y'all think that could have been? Any thoughts on that, Randall?
My initial reaction would be I've never seen exactly what he described, but at that time of the year where he's at, my first guess would be it's probably scouts, and perhaps getting together. If you read Dr. Seeley's books, Honeybee Democracy, that the bees have to come to consensus to move the swarm to the new cavity. So my guess would be that it's perhaps a group of scouts going to check out a site that's been recruited by some of the scouts as they finalize their selection process.
All right, Brian, what do you think?
My initial thing is I'm going towards, and I think a couple people in the chat here are saying the same thing, mating flight.
What do you think, Greg?
I think that's 100%. Jason called and kind of described. He said maybe 50 to 100 bees. It seemed like a dark cloud, but not a lot of bees. And they hit one spot, and then they zoomed up and went out towards the field, even further away from. And I asked him. I said, "Are you expecting any mating flights right now?" Because that's exactly what it looks like. That I'm on board. That's what I told him. I said, buddy, that looks like you just were watching drones kind of just hanging out with Sugar Mama, and they went on a ride. So I'll let him tell the rest of the story on what he saw right during the phone call. Bruce, what do you think?
Well, I think that's one option. I'm not really that familiar with what these drone congregation areas are like, but what I've always envisioned was just a group of hundreds, if not thousands, of drones in a big cloud, kind of up high in the sky. I could be wrong on that, and with the queen. But what I wonder is, does that queen, and Jason and I talked about that, does the queen just take off by herself and fly through those drones, or does she have like a little escort that takes her there? So my theory is that maybe that was a escorting group of bees taking a queen to a drone mating, because he said they were moving pretty quick. They weren't really, to him. I mean, to me, it sounds kind of like almost like what he described in my mind is almost like a common of bees just going to a spot. And I know they were a little bit weird looking, but now he did say they were very loud. And I understand, drones are much louder when they fly than regular bees. And so it's just an interesting little question. And I said, hey, Jason, man, make a video and we'll share it as a question on the chat tonight. So, but what do you think about that? Maybe it was like a escort. The bees.
Have you ever seen them come home?
I have not. That I know of.
That's, you guys have heard me say it, beat the dead horse. Brian, what is the most important piece of equipment in the bee yard?
What? Well, I mean, there's. Well, let me ask this: what are you doing?
It has 4 legs and you can sit on it, Brian.
Oh, well, the chair.
The thinking chair.
Yeah.
If you spend time in that thinking chair and you watch, especially when you're expecting you drop cells and you think they're going to I've seen them leave, and they'll leave out with a little ball of bees, and they'll bust out. And if you just sit there and watch, it doesn't take that long. Or in other colonies, what's interesting is in Randall, I'm especially excited for Randall keep an eye on this. Because if you are cutting cells and you're making splits with capped cells, just put one frame of bees in a box, and just a handful of bees, whatever's on the frame. And so you might have, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 bees. It doesn't take much more than that to carry a split or to get a queen back. But if you watch and even with no sealed brood in there, watch what happens to the population of that box before hatching and then after. Most of the time you will see that she will bring back a half a pound to a pound of bees with her in that box. And that box has way more bees in it when she comes home than when she left, even when there's no sealed brood in there.
I've heard that.
I think that's what happens is mama is emitting that pheromone. She's flying off. Drones are definitely mating. They're following, they're running around. But on the way home, I think, or to and fro, I think she picks up some stragglers and they want to go home with mama. So I think
interesting.
That's what I would say. Jason really can't comment on what he saw later, but I'll let you guys finish your thoughts, and then maybe I'll let you know. I'll chime in on what he's seen as him and I are talking this through.
So what you're telling me then, since the one swarm that I just checked the other day, I saw a little virgin running around, and then that other colony that I saw the virgin emerge out and was running around, you're telling me that I need to go and get in my thinking chair right now and just watch.
I'm never going to tell anybody what to do in the bee yard. I would highly encourage you to spend a little time in that thinking chair, and you will learn so much about bees just by emptying out your noggin and watching and getting to that place where you're just all of a sudden zoned out and you see, oh, that was a blur. That was a weird little ball of bees busting out. And then all of a sudden, I told Jason, it's kind of like watching a swarm in reverse when she comes home, though, because she goes right in, and then you'll see just this little, it's almost like a new orientation flight from the outside, and then it's like a reverse swarm. They just get sucked right back into the hive. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome. Well, that's kind of what we think.
That'd be
So,
my thought. Yeah.
I'll
So,
tell you
Jason?
what he's seen as he asked me the question, and I told him what I thought. He goes, "What in the world?" And he looked over next to the truck, and guess what fell to the ground or fell to the side of the truck?
Drones.
Yep.
Oh,
A
really?
drone fell right there. It sure did. And he thought it was going to the bathroom or had something coming off the rear end there. It could have been its unit itself. It could have done its job and fell to the ground. Maybe it was going to the bathroom and used his truck. It's probably a Ford, but who knows?
Oh, come on now. Hey, I was raised in a Ford country. Built Ford tough. That's why I say built Ford. What kind of truck? Do you drive a truck, Randall?
You mean like over the road or a pickup truck?
Just a pickup truck. Do you drive a
Oh.
pickup truck?
Yeah, I got a Silverado.
My man.
408, but I got a dedicated B truck. It's a Toyota Tundra.
Yeah,
There
I
you
drive.
go.
My truck is a Toyota Tundra. All of our cars are Toyotas. I'm a fan. But my family, I grew up with Fords. My brother drives Fords, but they're all good, to be honest. I'm not I'm not as I don't come down as
Jason
hard
says
on one
it was
side
a
or the other.
Dodge. I'll leave that one alone.
All right, guys. Well, we also have something we'd like to do here I guess we're pretty much at the top of the hour. It's been a little more than an hour. Can you believe how fast that went by, Randall?
Went by pretty fast. Sure has.
So, Brian, why don't you tell us what you're going to do here for us, Brian?
No. This is your idea.
Brian has agreed to donate one of his little 3D printed hives to give away as a gift on this live chat. And Brian, I really appreciate that. I'd like to pay for it, but he told me he just wanted to donate it. So
Don't worry about it. Randall, if you haven't seen these things, they even come with little individual frames, and it's got queen excluder. You got your bottom deep with the feeder. You can even set it up, and you can even have a little entrance reducer on the front of it. So, yeah. Now, I will say for this thing, look at Texas Beekeeper. He got one. A couple people in here got one. Within the United States, and I apologize for that just because shipping is just crazy. I actually have had a couple orders on my Etsy from Australia, and the shipping was astronomical, and I felt bad like communicating with the people. So within continental United States, those that want to be in on the drawing, I'm going to do a wheel of names thing. Just throw in some comments, whoever wants to be in it, and then I'll just take a participant list from the chat. So in the next minute or two while we're talking, just throw in comments. It could be anything, and I'll be able to pull a participant list. So while we're talking, next minute or two here, just throw in comments, and I'll throw you on the wheel. If you win and you already have one, because I know a couple people already have them, just tell us, hey, I'll pass on that. So,
hey, we could have them put something like contest on there or something, or just any comment. What do you want to do?
It'd be just any comment,
Okay.
any comment. So, yeah.
So if you comment in the next minute or two, you're gonna be entered for this thing. And like Brian said, if you've already got one, then just say bow out and he can spin the wheel again.
Yeah.
Man, it's amazing. We randomly joke about this. We always plan on about an hour and a half, and it's already been a dang hour that fast. So I would like to reach out and extend, just thank everyone for coming on here tonight. We've got a lot of folks on here now, and just appreciate all over the country, probably all over the world. We got people from everywhere, and I know we've got at least 2 people on here. There was a guy, I guess you say Duggan or Dugan, who's also from between Newton and Ozark, which is just right. Just, Ozark I got bees in Ozark, I got bees in Newton, and he's kind of in between the two. So a lot of people from right here local, but we got people from all over the country, and it's pretty awesome to have you guys in here.
Randall, I wonder, as you grow your operation there in your bee yard and you're getting to that goal, what do you think your biggest challenge is with the bee business, getting to where you want to go?
Well, right now it's going to be which has been the whole time for me, keeping my bees alive. I've had pretty good success with honey production over the years, but that's been the biggest challenge. I've actually touched up over 90 colonies a couple times, but it's just like a mountain peak. I'll go up and then right back down. By the end of the summer.
Yeah.
There is a video by Ian Stepler. I think he calls it the 10-day rule. And we talked about this probably a couple months ago. If you ever go into the Canadian Beekeepers channel and look at the 10-day rule, he explains kind of why that happens. It's really, really interesting. It's kind of a short video. I think it's less than 10 minutes, maybe 5 or 6 minutes long, but he explains that principle. My understanding is basically that, if it's kind of like any task that you have, and I think it probably applies to farming or anything else. If you say, for example, you're going to put mite treatments in, or beetle treatments, or feeding, or even at queen excluders or harvesting honey, if you have more to do than you can get done in 10 days, you're not going to be able to do it, and you'll probably lose some of those colonies. And so he basically says, hey, if you're a 200 hive beekeeper, you'll end up with 200. You might get to 400, but you'll end up with 200. And so the way you grow it is you got to grow it organically and increase your skills to the level to where you can keep them alive. And it sounds like that's kind of what I've tried to do. I've kind of tried to drop back and punt a little bit this year and figure out what I can do to keep them alive more than just double my numbers. Cause right now I could get up 200-300 colonies like by June, but do I want to do that? I'm not ready for that. And so, but that's kind of what you have to do, is go back and say, hey, what have I done wrong? Kind of revisit your techniques, what you're doing with the mite control and other things, and then you'll be able to get there. Okay, Brian, you ready?
I believe so. Let's throw this thing in there.
Drum roll.
Look at
drum
that.
roll, please.
We're fighting the clicking.
We are.
Okay.
Clicking.
All right.
Well, spin the wheel.
Let's spin it. Let's see who wins it.
I'm amazed you can do that so quick. You're just a whiz kid.
I know.
A whiz kid.
Away.
Hey-o! You need to put that on somebody else, but thank you. Brian actually was kind enough to donate one for someone at the learning yard at the last one. So spin that wheel, Brian.
Remove.
Spin her again.
I love it. I love that. That was classic right there. Right there. Uh-oh. Look at this.
There she is, Lisa.
She's a great supporter. I see her on all the live chats and videos, and I know we all appreciate her being so active.
Yeah. There you go, Grammy. Awesome stuff.
Grammy's midwife. Email
She's
me.
right here in Ozark, Alabama. Just 20 minutes away.
Email me, and or if I could probably find your channel, and then if your email is on your channel, then I'll just shoot you out an email, and then get your mailing address and get that out to you. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to ask Randall a couple more. I want to ask him a question about these monster hives that he's putting together. I've been intrigued with them. These hives that are, he says he's 6'1", and these things are probably a good couple feet taller than he is.
Wow.
So tell us the trick. Kind of tell us your philosophy. You've already talked about mite control, but how do you get those things to the point to where you can get them, 9 or 10 boxes tall like that?
Hey, Grammy already got one.
We're gonna spin the wheel again.
Wait. Let's go back and spin it again.
Okay.
We need some. What's that show? Price is Right music, don't we?
Dun,
I know.
Man, we'll get to that. Maybe one day we'll get to that point.
Look, rigged. Who is it? Jeremy Hale.
Congratulations. Come on down.
That's it. Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
All right, Jeremy. Okay, awesome.
Let's see here. Yeah.
All right, Randall, tell us your trick. How you do that? What's the trick to doing that?
Okay, well, my first big influence in beekeeping was about my second or third year in, when I come across Walt Wright's stuff. He used to write for Bee Culture magazine. He's deceased now. And I got on the phone with him a time or two, and I actually met him in person up in South. He lived on the Tennessee-Alabama line, and I went and visited him a couple of hours. And he sold me a little book. It's called Nectar Management and Checkerboarding. But the key to making it work is drawing combs that you can rear brood in. So it took me a couple of years to kind of dial that in to get it to work pretty good. And essentially what I do is try to maximize the bee population. I don't do any splitting for the most part, unless I catch a colony that's obviously going to swarm and I can't stop it. I try not to split any colonies. I try to maximize the population and capture that early honey flow. And that's kind of the secret of it, that there's just so many bees in there. If you're successful with them not swarming, you can really gather a large honey crop pretty quick with them. And that's kind of the short story of it there.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say that, well, go ahead with your question, because it may be going to lead to what I was going to say.
No, I kind of piggyback on that maybe a little bit. I years ago when I was first getting started, I think it was the third year I kept bees. I saw a video, and we've talked about this before on the channel a little bit. A guy named Tim Ives is up in Indiana. He's up not far from Notre Dame up there. I think it's a small town not far from up there. And so he has these hives that are a lot like what yours look like. You know, he actually runs a triple deep system. And the way he does it is the whole idea is maximize population. And I think his idea is, and I've heard Gus talk a little bit about, Gus has a different principle on honey production, but motivated bees, you know, you got a huge workforce that can go out and gather nectar and they can just pack it in. And it's amazing if you've got a motivated colony that's a big, strong colony like that, what they can do. And he has a little different strategy for doing it, but we really can't. I don't know if I'm a good enough teacher to really even explain that very well now, but I followed his principle, and I had a hive as like I say, my third year keeping bees back here, right here in my backyard, just right straight through there. And that joker, it did everything exactly like he said it would.
Wow.
There it is. Yeah,
look at that.
And he's
that scares me.
And Randall's 6'1", guys. He's 6'1". But so anyway, that joker, I got that thing up to 11 or 12 boxes at one point, 3 deeps plus however many mediums, and I got 315 pounds of honey off of that hive that year.
Wow.
But I have not been able to duplicate that since. And so I've had some that were approaching what Randalls are, but never been able to get quite back up to that stage. And so I think a lot of it is queens, you know, your queen ability. Now, Randall, you did a video probably maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, if I remember right, about you had one of your production colonies that went queenless and you used a nuke to help strengthen that colony, I think, to be able to accomplish hives like what you're talking about right here, the picture that Brian just showed. Tell us about that, because there are a lot of, I might say, myths about combining colonies and how you have to do that, what you have to do. I was impressed by the fact that you just put those jokers together and stacked honey supers on there immediately. And I would encourage anyone, you know, first of all, before we move on, anyone who's on here who has not gone and checked out Randall's channel, Carter Hill Honeybees, I'd encourage you to do that. It's really a good channel. Randall is very good at just explaining what he's doing, and he does things, you know, each of us does things a little bit differently, and I just love the way he explains it. And so go check it out. But in this one particular video, it's a technique that I had never really thought about doing it exactly like that. There was no newspaper involved, and somehow you combine those colonies, and kind of walk us through that process briefly, if you could, kind of what you did.
Okay, I was evaluating those colonies that day, and so it was hopelessly queenless. There was no brood in there, but yet they already had practically 2 mediums full of honey, and quite a few frames even in the deep that was full of honey. They was working very good, and there was no sign of a queen. So I'd already had evaluated I had 9 nukes left from last summer's splits that I'd made last year at the 1st of August. So I went and got the strongest one, because I felt like they could, you know, if there was an issue, they could defend the queen the best. So I just simply took it up there and pulled out 5 of the medium frames in there, or actually the 10 medium frames. I'm sorry, not medium frames. I took the 10 deep frames out and put those 10 frames out of that nuke in there, and then just shook the bees in on top of them and just simply put it back together. I didn't use any newspaper. I've done that technique several times and without a newspaper, and I've only had one time it's ever failed on me, and I may have done it a little too quick. I done it in the late summer one year, and it was probably about a month after I'd made that particular colony. It may have been a little too quick, and the queen may not have got to where she needed to be. But any time in the spring I've done that technique, it's worked flawlessly without a newspaper.
I think the key would be a decent flow, right? They're more readily willing to accept a queen if there's a flow going. Is that correct? Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would say that does help make a difference. And plus, that queen was has been 6-7 months old or whatever, 5 months, and her pheromone output and stuff, her confidence, the way she moves around the colony should be pretty stable, so they would be more inclined to accept her. Another example is one year during my no treatment years, I went to this yard and I had 6 colonies there, and 4 of them was really weak, and I was aggravated, mad. I could plainly see they weren't going to make honey. So, and I was actually tutoring a guy that year, and he was just shocked. But I just got flustered, and I picked those hives up and just stacked them one on top of the other, queens and all, 4 colonies. And then I just come back a few days later and shook them all down to one and put some supers on it. And I wound up getting 4 supers off of that colony after doing that. So I don't know which queen they took, if they used all 4 of them for a while or what, but it actually kind of got them going doing that.
That's the thing. A lot of people just don't. I mean, it's just the bees don't always read the books. They never read the books actually, but you hear things that'll happen, and a lot of these theories, I think, when you really talk to beekeepers that deal with a lot of bees, you kind of just have to try things, and you have to realize now, if you're a hobby beekeeper and just have a couple of hives, you really can't risk things as much. But once you build up and you got a few numbers, sometimes you have to try some things and just see what happens. And sometimes you'll find that you can do a lot of things with bees that you read in the books you couldn't do. Would you agree with that, guys?
Totally. There's so many things that when you've got the resources to risk, I mean, the way I go about making splits, moving colonies, one of the statements that I learned from one of my early mentors was that people say a lot of things. That's for sure. And that the bees don't read those books. But if you take enough time to read the bees and read the situation and learn what they do, not necessarily by reading a piece of paper, but just by spending time looking in the colony, you will find that you can do all the things that everyone says you cannot do, including, checkerboarding was something that a lot of folks, said it was ridiculous, didn't work, they would never do it, on and on and on. A lot of us have been doing that for years and years and years. It's a fantastic tool. I think with anything, context is key, but there's so many things that folks say that they can't do. And I don't wonder sometimes, where is the hitch in that giddy up? Is it a beekeeper mentality? Is it the way that they go about it? There's also something to be said that sometimes, genetically speaking, maybe some bees do things a little bit different. We can take a capped cell and split a colony out before they even swarm. Or we can knock down those cells and checkerboard the brood box and give them room, and those bees stick. Those bees don't swarm. Some folks can't. They say they can't do that. Some folks say that when a colony decides they want to swarm and start making a cell, they think that they can't turn that box around and they're going to swarm. I haven't seen that. Doesn't mean it's not true for somebody else, but I'm sure Randall has a whole list of things that people have said for all these years that you can't do, and you find yourself doing those things in the bee yard, and you're thinking, I don't know what the difference is here, but I guess the bees don't read the books, do they, Randall?
No, I don't think so. And what you just described, I've actually had happen this year. I got a couple of 3 videos on that, and I'm pretty sure I was successful in stopping that colony from swarming. I had to do it twice, pull brood off of it twice, but the key to the way I get such a big colonies is the queen's always got the brood nest has always got to have a place to expand, and that's the key to the thing right there. Is keep that brood nest expanding through what Walt referred to as the swarm cutoff date, and then once that transitions, you can kind of back off of that philosophy a little bit.
Randall, for those of us who out here, for those who may just be getting started in beekeeping, I know we have several folks on here, maybe new beekeepers. I know we have some hobbyists on here as well as sideliners, kind of like us, and then commercial guys like Greg and others. But for someone who's maybe just getting started, maybe has just a couple of colonies, or and they want to grow and double and maybe get up to, maybe they say they've got 4 colonies, they want to get to 20. how would you recommend that they do that? As far as, usually they won't have the resources with the drawn comb. Drawn comb is like gold. I think anyone who's had bees any length of time knows that. If you want to make a lot of honey, if you want to have a colony explode in a hurry, that drawn comb is extremely valuable. But what about someone who starts off with, say, 2 colonies? They buy a couple of nukes or packages, stick them in a 10 frame box, and now those colonies have expanded into the entire 10 frame brood box. Now, what do they do to be able to grow? How do they get that new comb drawn out and maybe, start to maximize their potential with those colonies and with growth?
Okay, well, for a new beekeeper, I would, after my experience, I would definitely focus immediately on honeybee health and how to keep the bees alive. And once you become successful at that, then the art of beekeeping, you can develop that in your own way of doing things. So I kind of call that a baseline. And over the years, during my swarm trapping days, I would try to get a lot of comb drawn with swarms because they're genetically programmed to build all the comb to survive their first winter from just a complete void. So you can get them to draw a lot of comb, and that I've utilized swarms in that way. And I typically, on my honey production colonies, I might get 1 or 2 drawn a year, not that much, but I've tried to utilize swarms to do it. And I've done a little bit with feeding some syrup a little bit after the flow, not as much probably as I could have, but for me, catching swarms and utilizing them to draw a lot of comb is kind of the way I did it.
So what if you, like, say example, even at the level you're at now, where you're at 40, 50 colonies, you want to grow to, let's just say you want to get up to 70, and you need more comb drawn for honey production. It seems like you're always chasing that equipment. Like, I never feel like I have enough equipment. And even that Tim Ives that I was talking about earlier talks about how the only thing limiting him is just the equipment, because it grows logarithmically. Basically, it just explodes when you get a lot of colonies. So say you've got a fair amount of drawn comb, but you want to make more hives, more production colonies. How do you get the new, I use mediums, I think you do too. How do you get that new medium foundation drawn out in the most efficient way? I know Gus Mitchell, when he was on here, gave us a technique that he uses. What do you use to draw out the new comb? How do you configure the boxes to do that in the fastest way?
Okay. In the springtime, in the past, what I have done is to prevent a colony from swarming. I feel like I'm going to need at least 4 drawn out mediums on there. So once I get the colonies past that point, the swarm cutoff, and as they transition to honey production, I'll start mixing in some foundation there, and then usually you can get them to draw a couple supers out that way off the natural nectar flow. I've been able to do that too, and but if I was going to do that and try to draw that much comb with what I have now, I would try to get my honey off as quick as I could sometime in June or early July, and then stimulate comb drawing with sugar syrup if I was needing to draw that much that rapidly. That's about the only way I would know to do it.
Greg, thanks for the super sticker, and we'll segue to you. What do you do to draw out, if you're trying to make honey, how would you draw out that get some more, if your goal is to get new comb drawn out for the future, what do you do for that, for next year, to be able to have a greater honey harvest?
That's a little bit of a trickier question, I think, for me, because we don't even hardly raise that much honey right now. We're at the scale where what we do make is going right back into splits and feeding queens. Because of that, we have feed on year round. Not that they're taking it necessarily, but with those bucket feeders, we use Pro Sweet year round. And in the springtime, even before we have a good flow, those rascals are drawing out comb left and right in the spring, even on Pro Sweet. When the flow gets on, they really get crazy doing that. I don't really overthink it for us, for what works really good for me. I mean, what we're doing, I think there's something to be said about when you're splitting down colonies and they are queenless, or you just have a queen cell and they're waiting. That is probably the most opportune time for me to put in fresh sheets. They've got feed. When it kind of gives them something to do, it seems, and they're just drawing out comb left and right. By the time that queen goes and then comes back, now she has a place to lay. That's a technique that I'm using constantly. So I would say what I do is probably, I would say, checkerboarding constantly, even in the brood chambers. Even if there happens to be a super on, if I'm in 2 or 3 boxes, I'm just constantly checkerboarding, giving them places to do their thing. That has been a technique that we've used for years. That has worked great for us. Towards the end of the year, when we're doing any kind of downsizing splits, if we're reducing our numbers into, get them down to 1 or 2 boxes, and we have some, extra comb, we'll let them feed on those things, get them cleaned up, get them empty, store them. But for the most part, I don't actually have to store a lot of drawn comb because I'm trying to get colonies split and downsized and requeened, to where almost all of my comb is being in use going into the wintertime. So most of my drawn comb that I would have would just be from dead outs. And that just quickly gets right back into circulation, gets cleaned up and gets going. And then I'm in the rotation of putting fresh sheets of Premier foundation in. And that's kind of been our cycle year after year. But that's because we're raising bees, not honey. So it's probably going to be different, if you're raising honey primarily.
Those are all great ideas. Now here's just a kind of I guess maybe almost like a yes or no answer. Do you guys feel like, and Brian, chime in anytime, man, from your experience as well, but do you feel like they will draw comb out quicker in a nuke box as opposed to a full-sized 8 or 10 frame box?
Last year when I set up, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of packages, and people start talking about if packages are any good or not. But when I set up my packages from this here fella right down below me, the ones that I put into my double nuke setups, those resource colonies that, you want to call them, or double nukes or whatever it is, I had probably the best luck with those bugs in those boxes drawn out comb. And also, when I put a queen excluder above the 2 colonies, those things filled out those supers faster than any other, But now I had, you have colonies that are working 4 frame boxes, and I was pulling, frames out of them, supplementing to others, and they were just machines, And I got the idea last year. I had never done it before. Let me just throw an excluder on top of these things also and give them more room. And I mean, they were filling out those supers like mad. So from my experience in my, this is backyard beekeeping. I'm not commercial, anything like that. But those double nuke setups, they pumped out the comb.
I'm with you. When you can find their space and let them stack up. Population's the key, but if you've got a jam and nuke box, they will be busting quick. And if you can keep stacking that up and then checkerboarding those fresh frames in there as you go up,
Yeah.
to me, those nuke boxes, hand over fist, make way more foundation or drawn comb for me than if I do a 10 frame box. Especially if you thought there's something about when you get 5 or 6 frames deep and then start to get a double or a triple, they get to a point where they just kind of peter out. It's a lot more effort to get them to do the thing rather than keeping them into a more narrow space and go up and just keep feeding that narrow space all the way up. But Randall, what do you think?
I pretty much see exactly what you just described. The nuke, I can take and I'll do this a lot of times at the end of the summer. Swarms that I caught that didn't draw out like they should, I'll put them back in a nuke, demote them down to a nuke or whatever for the winter. But yeah, I clearly, just like you, I see them draw comb a lot better double stacking nukes.
Bruce, what do you think about pulling queens out of boxes to get them to a place where they think they've gotten to a queen for a little period of time? Have you guys seen any kind of difference on them drawing comb when they don't have a queen in the box?
Oh, I've never even thought about that before. I've always assumed they would draw more with a queen, so I've never really thought about that. That's I may need to try that and see. I just to kind of add to the conversation as well, I do believe that, I've got a friend here locally that just runs nukes. That's all he runs. He stacks nuke boxes up and does his whole operation. He's a nucleus colony beekeeper. I don't even know if he has any 10 frame boxes. And if you look at my bee yard right now up in Ozark, I have a lot of double and triple stack nukes just because I'm almost out of 10 frame equipment. And I just love it. And when it comes to I think there's a couple of keys. I think there are a couple of keys to drawing comb and we've all hit on this. Obviously, nutrition. There's got to be a flow, whether it's artificial or a real flow going on. There's got to be resources coming in. The bees are not going to waste energy on drawing comb if they don't have any nectar source or resources coming in to make wax with, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that it's critically important that you have, if you want them to draw out good, pretty comb, it needs to be, if you're using foundation, it needs to be a foundation that has a good wax coating. Now, I've got, for the last several years, I've used Pureco triple wax plastic frames is what I love those things. And the bees will draw that out so fast. This year, I just ordered a pallet of Premier extra heavy wax frames. So I'm kind of running a test on those. The truth is that the one-piece plastic frames, triple waxed, are quite a bit less expensive. And I have not had the issues with beetles that a lot of people say. I find that I have beetles in hives with plastic frames or with wooden frames. But I'm trying it out now. I've just started putting those in, and the bees do draw every single frame that I've seen from the Premier. I have not seen a single frame of wonky comb yet. They all draw them out perfectly. But as far as the speed of drawing them out, I'm not sure if there's much of a difference yet. But I'm thinking about doing some splits soon. Maybe, Greg, when I get your queens in June, if we're still in a pretty decent flow, I may actually try kind of your test. I may put, the split, maybe 3 frames in the middle of brood and stuff, and then stagger the Pureco and the Premier on one side, put the Pureco Premier, and the other side put Premier, the opposite, and see if they really choose a difference or if they kind of draw it out evenly. So far, it seems like they're doing it pretty evenly, but it's just a great test to see. But I think it's key that you have really nice, either if you're going whatever you choose to use, it has to be set up for success, because anyone out there who has used plastic foundation before that is not properly waxed, whatever the brand, will know that it's just it can become a mess.
Nightmare.
That wonky comb is one of I can't stand that stuff. And I just about, if a frame that I buy does not have heavy wax, extra heavy wax, triple wax, whatever the brand, I'm not sticking it in my colonies. I'm willing to pay a little bit extra to get that. And you can wax it yourself. I know people do that, but I prefer to buy it already waxed where it needs to be. So, but I do think in my opinion, the narrow nuke boxes, they do seem to just shoot up into those things. They like that more narrow space. But a motivated colony will fill out anything.
Mm-hmm.
A new swarm like Randall talked about, it doesn't care. They don't care. They'll just fill it out. The other issue is a lot of people don't believe in checkerboarding. And I know there's a debate to be had. There's probably people right now in these comments that really don't think you should do that. I believe it depends on the time of the year.
Yep.
If you're breaking out splits, right in early spring, when it's still kind of cold outside, you don't probably need to do that. Even here in the South, you don't need to do that. But right now in a good flow, just an example, Greg, I had a double stack nuke. It was one of my Lappy's queens, I think, or maybe it was a daughter of her. I'm not sure if they requeened, but I think it was maybe that queen I got from Lappy's late last August. The Carniolan bees, they kind of stayed small through the winter. They survived. I was like, man, are these things ever going to? I stuck her in there last year, just kind of trying to save a colony in a little nuke. Didn't think they were going to do anything, and they started to explode a few weeks back. Stacked a second double a nuke box on there, filled that joker out. So last like 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago or something like that, I'm like, okay, I still have a few deep boxes left. I took 2 deeps up there. I'm like, I'm going to try this experiment out. Premier foundation, extra heavy wax, 10 frames of Premier foundation. I think I put 10 frames in there, and to the 10 frames that were in the 2 double stack nukes. I set a bottom board down. I transferred all the bees and the frames from the bottom box, checkerboarded them, drawn out foundation bees, foundation, checkerboard them all the way across. Second box, same thing. So I had 10 frames of foundation and 10 frames of brood and drawn out comb in there. Went back a week later, and almost every single one of those frames is totally drawn out, and she's laying in there. So, I mean, that's
Nice.
You doubled their size, a double stack nuke into a double stack 10 frame box. And now they've got honey boxes on them like within 2 weeks. And so motivated colonies will actually kick tail this time of the year. So that's one reason I wanted to ask that question.
Bruce, what makes a colony want to draw wax? If you think about where does the wax come from? Trace it back to where does the wax come from? I think that kind of cues you in to what you can do with them and how you can make them more motivated to do that. How does beeswax come into fruition, and how does it get on the frames or on the foundation?
Well, I know they make Randall. You might have a better response to that. I know it comes from scales that the wax creating bees actually. I've seen pictures of scales that come out of their abdomen, but I'm not sure the entire process. I know it requires nectar. I know it requires probably pollen, food. I know it requires good quality food for them to make wax. But what do you think, Randall? What's your theory on that, or what do you know about that?
It seemed to just they need a good amount of heat from the cluster. It seemed like the wax makers will usually you'll find them up above the cluster, and also they need a good source of nectar coming in, pretty strong nectar or sugar syrup stimulation if there's no nectar available.
That's a good point. I mean, is that one reason, do you think possibly that the nukes go a little quicker because the heat source is higher? I've never thought about that before.
The key component is the heat. It's more efficient in the nuke that way.
What do you think, Greg?
That's spot on. The heat is the big thing. The other thing, which I think is, you'll people say a lot of chicken crispers.
Whoops, I didn't mean to put that on. I guess that's fine.
Chicken crispers. I wonder Randy with the chicken crispers. Now inquiring minds want to know. Okay, Randy. Now with the chicken crispers, you got to have the corn, right? The corn comes with it. Now, is Randy the kind of guy that cuts the corn off with a knife and then eats it, or is Randy just jawing on that corn and just squirting his wife across the table with the corn kernels and then stuck in his teeth? Randy inquired.
Randy, you gotta answer Randy on that one.
But hang on 1 second. When that happens, and right when that kernel goes to shoot over, is there someone in the background that's saying live action?
Yeah, live action. I can see Yappy the Bee Man just jumping out of the middle of a booth and just going, yeah, live action. Make it. That's hilarious. While Randy finishes choking on his corn so he can answer the question, here's what I think, and I say this because it's one of the unintended consequences of raising queens and nukes is we constantly have feed on year round. With those buckets and with ProSweet, I don't have to worry about the feed going bad. It doesn't sour, doesn't freeze, but it's heavy. It's a 3-to-1. It's 11.5 pounds a gallon, a little better than that actually. My theory, and this is just my simple hillbilly mind thinking about bees, is if the wax comes from the platelets on the bees, the more carbohydrates that we feed the bees, it seems, the more wax they produce. So if we're feeding them a very carbohydrate rich diet, ProSweet for instance, or like Randall said, a good thick heavy nectar flow, those ladies just go to town and they're just constantly sweating wax. So you have a combination of, if you have heat in the hive and they've got a lot of carbohydrates, they just put on tons and tons and tons and tons of wax. But as soon as it cools off, or they're out of feed and there's no flow, it's like a light switch. It just boom, it's done. Which kind of begs the question. A lot of folks argue over a lot of things, but 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 or what I should be doing for brute for this or that, the other thing. We're taking video this year. I've been feeding 3-to-1 year round, and I've got video of them drawing out foundation like it's no one's business. So it's kind of an interesting.
Is that year round, Greg, or is that
year round
injection with the flow? Okay.
And that is just
when you say 3-to-1, you mean three sugar to 1 water?
When I say 3-to-1, I mean ProSweet.
ProSweet. So what is ProSweet? Is it 1-to-1, 2-to-1, 3? What is it actually?
It's about a 3-to-1. Yeah. So it's like 74%. What is it? 74% sucrose.
Okay, so it's pretty thick.
Some dextrose, and then a little bit of fructose. Yeah,
it's pretty thick then.
Very thick.
Do you ever put water in it and condense it down at all, or you just shoot it straight?
Well, if the price of fuel stays so high, I might try to thin it down just so I can keep them thinking that they've got feed on longer and keep them happy. But for right now, here's the other weird thing. And Randall, I don't know if you've probably seen it. For whatever reason, it seems like when I feed those bees ProSweet, you know, it'll sit on there, and then when they need it, they suck it down. But it almost seems like they don't require as much volume of feed when I feed them that heavier syrup than it would be if I was feeding them 1-to-1 constantly.
Well, I have no experience with Pro Sweet. I don't have access to that, but with sugar syrup, yeah, basically just what you said there. If once that nectar starts coming in from outside pretty good, they're pretty much shut down on it. I saw that with the packages I put in here just 30-something days ago. It happened pretty quick. I actually the second I put 2 gallon on there altogether. The second round I pretty much poured out a half a gallon of that because the nectar flow had started.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Jason said that we just influenced him to add a second nuke instead of changing them to a 10 framer. Right this time of the year, Jason, you're probably good either way. I've been doing a little bit of everything. I'm getting to that point to where equipment wise, I've got a few deeps left. I've only got like 4 or 5 medium boxes left. I've got like, I think 1 medium frame left. So I'm getting down to I'm stacking nukes up, doing anything I can to, and I like I say, I love these nukes because they do explode up quickly, but it's okay to go ahead. Now, one thing you can do if you want to put them in a 10 frame eventually is you can let them, and I do a lot of this, I'll let them grow up into those nuke boxes and then get a couple nuke boxes packed full of bees, and you can put them in a 10 frame and start stacking them up. So all kinds of things you can do. But this time of the year, honestly, even in a 10 frame box, they'll just blow it out, you know, especially because it's warming up. And, you know, they don't have to worry about conserving heat that much. And so it works really well.
This time up here, like Greg said it earlier, this week here in Ohio is just going to go crazy. And what I've kind of hit a couple of my colonies, like I think, well, I know the one I was a hair late, but timing wise on a lot of mine, I've been almost about spot on. And when I got into my colonies on Monday, and Greg's probably seen the same darn thing. Well, he probably saw it about a week ago because where I'm at, I'm about a week or 2 behind him. But I just started to see in my brood areas where they were starting to throw in a little bit of nectar, just here and there. And
Started. They're backfilling. They sure are. I mean,
and
you better get space on them, man.
That was on Monday. On Saturday, when I spent, you know, part of the day over, what I was doing was getting all my supers cleaned and all those frames and everything set. So my colonies that I'm having, you know, that I have set up for honey production, they got the room on them now.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna step away just a second and grab something real quick. Okay. Y'all keep going.
Yep. I don't know if this is like the worst way to do this, but I saw something today in one of our breeder colonies. And I thought, I got to try to show these guys. I should maybe just text you the photo. Let me see if I can hold it up to the camera. Let's see here. This darn ring light. Let's see. Look this way. Okay.
Wow.
Check out these drone frames.
Oh my gosh.
Now that if anyone who's raising queens, when you see something like that in one of your breeder queens, that's all drones, and that is back to back. Each side of that green frame. It's just absolutely. So not only is this breeder queen a bricklayer for the brood, she is filling out those drones something gorgeous, which makes me so excited because I know. So now what I do is, and I'll take those drone frames and I'll take them out a little bit further at the farm where we're set up. It's a little over 100 acres, and so I can put a drone area at the north end, the west end, and the east end, and they're half a mile apart, and drop my queens in the center, so I can take these. No matter where my breeders are, I can take these drone frames and pop them all over the place and really start dialing in the saturation of those areas there. So when I see something like that drone frame, man, that gets me so excited because those are the drone genetics that I want. And for her to just to be a Bruce, you got to see this. Look at this.
I saw it. I saw it as you were. Yeah, that's incredible. It's amazing.
That makes me so happy when I see something like that. I got to thank Jason Paris. He put an order in for plugs. There at our website. So Jason, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Jason, he's got some really great questions here. I just wonder where he's from. Maybe he'll answer us here pretty quick. So we always joke about this. If anyone who's been on these chats kind of late when we get into them, an hour and a half or so, you realize that.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we've got 120 folks on here. We've had up to about 125 or 130, but we're almost at our peak right now. We're an hour and a half in. I told Randall this happens. You're right when you start thinking you want to kind of coast in a little bit, then all of a sudden Yeah, Jason's in Southwest Florida, so he's plenty warm down there. Yeah, I think you're fine, Jason, down there. Just to put him in 10 frame. Just whatever you think you want to do is fine. I think we got Sebastian on here from Beekeeping Gardening, but
Oh,
before
hey,
we go
Smack.
on to the next, I've got a little something I want to do here. I just kind of thought about this. Brian and I have been texting back and forth a little bit, but I just appreciate everyone being on here and go and check out. We've had a question or two about whether or not Randall has a YouTube channel, and Brian and I think has he's put the link on there. But name of the channel is Randall Carter, Carter Hill Honeybees. Go check it out. He is actually here in Alabama, but great information. And man, we could talk all night. I know we're not going to, but we could. So, but I wanted to give away something else, another giveaway. Got a bottle of Bruce's Bees honey here. I don't know how well you can see that.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be willing to send this anywhere once again in the United States. Can't send it anywhere else, but in the United States will be fine. And we'll wrap it in there. So if anyone's interested in the honey, I tell you what, just put the word honey in the comments. Does that work, Brian, for you? Or is it easier just to do
throw in
anything?
some comments? Yeah.
Yeah, just any comments over about the next minute or two.
Yep.
And we're going to kind of dive into the final segment of our show here. Probably go about another 30 minutes or so is the plan, and we'll wrap it up.
Hey, Bruce, you think you could take that bottle of honey and could you just pass it to your right? Just pass it. See if you can hand it off to me. Let's see if I can grab it.
Let me see. Hold on.
With
Let me
the
see
magic of the
way-
internet. Well, how about that? Wait a minute. Look, it lost
Somebody-
some of its volume.
somebody
over the
ate half.
Wi-Fi.
Somebody ate half of it. The
They
computer ate half
haven't
of it.
quite figured out, like, when it digitally when it goes through those wires, it eats up a little bit of it just for the energy.
It's like what was that show? Not Star Wars, Star Treks, where you get in and they teleport and they
Yeah.
and you always wondered as a kid, do they what if they have to go to the bathroom during midstream there? I mean, what happens? Do you lose half of your body? You just magically teleport and everything makes it. What if something doesn't make it? Like your hair.
So,
Woo.
so are you
Philadelphia
saying when
Project.
Scotty beams them back up, there's problems?
That's it. Beam them up, Scotty. But anyway, whoever's the lucky winner, this is some super good stuff. It also makes a great palate cleanser if you take the Hive Alive Chug Challenge. Right, Brian?
Okay, I got a comment
We're
on
gonna
this.
digress.
Where'd it go right here? Oh,
Sorry,
lose
that's
these
easy with
comments
me.
so quick.
Squirrel dog.
Where'd it go? There it is. Dry cut said this. Chug it. I gotta tell you all a story about this, and it's not me. If you're talking about honey, years ago I saw a young guy on YouTube, crazy. He I mean, I guess he does crazy things to get views, but it's probably been 8 or 10 years ago. But he woke up one morning, started his YouTube video, and he said, what I'm gonna do today is drink a gallon of honey. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. He had a gallon of honey there. He said, I'm not gonna just drink the gallon of honey, I'm gonna drink it with a bee beard on. That's just a young college age kid, big, strong looking kid. So I'm like, okay. So of course he had me drawn in by then. So he went and he had a beekeeper lined up, put the bee beard on, and this kid starts drinking this honey. Well, he probably gets like a cup in and he's already getting sick. And the bees are, I don't remember if he had a beard or not, but the bees are just all over. He's trying to drink that honey. And he became incredibly sick by doing that. And then the bees are everywhere. It was just a total mess. And so it was something else. So I don't know about chugging honey. Now, if it comes to Hive Alive, I'm not going to chug that either. So
This is a little bear that Rodney sent me. And
yeah, I got one of those. I got two.
Yeah.
I got one of those as well. It's good stuff. Really good stuff. I've gotten some honey from different people over the years. It's good stuff. So let's go ahead and spin the wheel. Let's see what we got.
Keto approved. Let's see.
That ain't keto approved.
All right,
Yeah,
guys.
that is good honey, Bruce.
I'm probably going to be up for 3 days now with all this sugar.
Let's spin the wheel. See what we got, man. Let's see who wins this thing.
Oh, look at this. Look. Oh, Hawking Hills.
Hawking Hills.
Hey, that's old Dave Nestle. He's in my neck of the woods. He's bought some queens and some bee stuff, and super good guy. That's awesome. He won that.
Mhm.
All right. Well, Dave, send me an email. Shoot me an email. Bruce@brucesbees.com. That's Bruce. Don't forget that second S in the Bruce's Bees. BRUCE@BRUCES. Bees.com. And send me that
Bruce?
email with an address and stuff, and we'll get you a bottle of it.
What is that? Is that It almost has a little bit of a sourwood flair to it. Would it?
It's tallow more than likely.
Oh, tallow.
So my next question, okay, we're gonna bring Randall. We're gonna bring our guest back into the show here. He's so quiet down there, but anyway, shoot me that email, and we'll get you with an address and some contact info, and we'll get you that bottle of honey out. That'll be awesome. So Randall, okay, so you said the privet is beginning to bloom up there. We're done down here. Do you have tallow up there as well where you're at?
No, after watching some of your videos, I've looked on Google or whatever it's called. I can't remember, but I've looked for that particular tree, and I don't think it grows this far north.
Do they have a tree up there called a popcorn tree? Do people call it that? Because people also call tallow popcorn trees. I don't know if you'd heard that. Some people down here don't even know what tallow is, but they hear the word popcorn trees, and so.
Yeah, I've not heard that term.
Okay. So what is your main flow then? I know you say you've got the privet blooming. What else? What are you packing those hives with right now?
I get a lot of honey, and they start filling in late March and through April, and it's a combination of blackberries, dewberries, tulip poplar. There's a lot of stuff I don't even know what it is that blooms out there in the woods. And the privet comes in, and it pretty much starts winding down when common elderberry and the sumac varieties start coming in. And we have a little bit of sourwood, but I do see bees working it. I don't think they get much off of it. That usually comes in mid to late June on the sourwood.
Okay. So when do you wrap your honey season up? I know ours is done really for the most part by mid-June, probably mid to late June at the very latest.
Yeah, I think ours wraps up by mid-June. I know I don't never get any foundations drawn after June the 10th. So I think sometime around mid-June, there's probably still some out there, just not enough for them to continue to draw comb. Okay. So I pretty much will start harvesting honey around the 4th of July or shortly after.
Okay. So you don't harvest an early harvest. You just kind of wait and just do it all. I'll try and do it all at once.
I did a early harvest several years ago, and I didn't know what I know now, but I had a time getting the moisture down under 18%. It was like 18.7, 18.5, and I didn't know how to do it then, but it took me a couple of weeks to get it down enough to bottle it. So I've been very reluctant to do that again.
Okay. This is a topic we've never discussed before on here, guys. Humidity or moisture in the honey. Randall, why don't you tell us kind of what your ideal, I know they say 18 or below, right, is acceptable. What is your ideal moisture content, and how do you decrease it? Now down here in the South, it's very humid. We have to deal with that. So what do you do? Obviously, you just said you kind of go a little bit later in the season, but tell us about moisture content, what your philosophy is on that, what the ideal in your situation is, and how you decrease it if it's too high.
Well, back then I tried, this is going to sound a little funny. Now I got like a 12 by 20 metal building that we extract in. It's very small. So I purposely got too small of an air conditioner at that time, and that would kind of help keep the humidity down at that time. But about 2 years ago, I learned this from Bob Beanie. So last year I tried the dehumidifier and some space heaters, and I'd keep it in there 90 degrees day and night. And when I checked my honey before I extracted, I mean, it's like 18.1, and I pulled it down well into mid 15.5% range. And best tasting honey, in my opinion, I've ever had. So that's something new I've learned right there. That's really is a difference maker. Now I know I can, and I need to harvest earlier due to my mite treatment strategy. So now I know I can come in here in the middle of June or right at the end of May, and I can start pulling honey now because I know how to pull that moisture down.
Now, you did a video? Yeah, you did a video on that last year, didn't you? On how you dehumidified it. I remember watching some of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, do you remember the title of that? Maybe Brian could post it, or folks on here, if you want to go check that video out. It's very interesting, and it's some good stuff. And Randall talks about how so what you do is you stack it into the boxes, and then you do it in the boxes before you extract it, correct?
Yes. I just pulled the supers off. I blow the bees out with a leaf blower. I stacked them in there, and this slowed me down, but I dehumidified it with fans and space heaters for 3 days, and then I slung it out. So I'm going to have to probably get me a separate building just to do that step. That way I can keep extracting, because it's taking me too long to extract the honey.
So what is the reason that you dehumidify it before you extract it?
Well, you have so much more surface area with the honey still in the comb. It's just a lot more efficient to do it that way.
That's right. I remember Bob Benny. I saw a video on him a while back where he talked about that surface area, how important that is, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Do you guys up in the north have issues with the moisture, with humidity, or how is the humidity up there? Do you guys have issues with that?
Last year I had, no, I got as I think it was either a bird. I got as a gift, a little, what is it? The hygrometer, hydrometer. What's the little
refractometer?
Refractometer.
That's right.
One of them tometers I got. So I had, and I only harvested last year select. It was just certain frames, just because they were packages last year. They did exceptionally well. Throwing a plug out there again. And fully capped frames. Okay. When I went and checked it with the refractometer, it was like way high. I forget where it was at, but it was like over 19 or so. It was like way high. And I was like, hang on, that don't seem right. So I looked, and then I just got checking, and it depends on, there's a couple factors that could go into that, but the number one thing that was listed, if your moisture content is high, if you've had a lot of rain. Well, last year we were getting pounded with rain here, and then it thins out that nectar. So that was the first time I ever had an issue with it being high like that. But all I did was, I put it in the basement with the dehumidifier for a little bit, and it was fine, but
Greg, what are your thoughts? Any thoughts on this?
I kind of subscribe to some of the more less refined approach to honey collection. And one of the tricks early on that I've used is, for us, when it's capped, I've never had a problem with the fermenting. I've never had a problem with it going in it getting weird. And then there's some times of the year where they won't cap it, and it just sits there, and they won't, and then you just don't seem like you can get them to that point to do anything with it. And I'll just take the frame and I'll shake it, and if it doesn't rain, if it's not raining out of the frame, I've spun it, and I haven't had any problem with it at all. So that has seemed to work well for me. But that's in Ohio. We're usually, there's only a few times where we're really spinning honey. It's right around the 4th of July. It'll be after goldenrod, so it'll be fall time, or it'll be early spring if you're spinning anything off a dead out. So there's not really, the only time where you have high humidity, really, like Brian mentioned, would be during a rain or rain events. Even in July, I mean, in Ohio, for us to complain about humidity in Ohio, to you fellas being down there, how can we even complain about humidity? You guys, that's a whole new thing. It's so thick down where you guys are at. I mean, that's so I'm sure, and like where Bob is at, you have to go about it a little bit different. So,
yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, Brian had a video pulled up there a second ago. Do you still have that, Brian, with the picture of the boxes all stacked up? You just showed them. I saw them all stacked up there.
Oh,
but I was just intrigued last year, Randall. The way I ever heard about Randall was, I'm just going to tell you, Randall's all about helping folks out, because last year, I've had this method I've used for years of catching bees high in the trees with a bucket. I have an extension pole. I put a 5-gallon bucket, just use the old, did a little redneck engineering, use duct tape, fasten that thing to a telescoping paint pole. I've got a couple different telescoping poles, and I go up there and I catch swarms that way. Well, Randall has a way, he calls it a scoop and score, I think. Yes. He calls it. And catching them on with a little basket, like a what's that little trash can you put on there? It works really well. And he
Yes.
suggested, I still haven't made one. I need to do that because it works well. And that's the very first video of his I watched. And I think back then, Randall, you kind of were just kind of getting started with the channel, weren't you? Had just a few subscribers, and it's
I've
really
just had
taken
this
off.
channel about a year, not even a year and a half yet. And that was my very first video, was about catching, how I catch swarms high off the ground.
And I think you were probably around 100 subscribers. I don't know what it was at the time, but now I see you're up well over 1,000 and growing quickly. And so it's just because you care. I think you really care about showing what you're doing, and that's what people really like. And so I would encourage folks to go back. But later in the summer, I started watching those videos about how you kind of collect your honey, extract your honey, and you've got that little honey house there, and it just seems like a lot of work, but man, you really pay close attention. You're real careful to try and do everything right to produce the best quality product you can. And so I think it's interesting how you do that. And you're just doing, you pay a lot of attention to detail in all your stuff. I mean, in your whole, even your hives, they've got numbers on them. It's like you're really doing a good job of paying attention to detail. And I'm not as good at that. So I could learn a lot from you. Just trying to think what else. Of course, as we're talking, I have all these questions I want to ask, but I never remember to ask them all. I would tell the folks watching here, if we've got 100 and almost 130 people on here right now. So it's crazy, but if you have any questions you'd like to ask, we're probably going to try and wrap this up in the next few minutes. Just put them in all caps, so we'll be able to, hit them real quick. If you got any questions for Randall or any of us that we can answer, hit it in all caps.
I did see one a little bit earlier. Somebody asked me how much honey I got last year. And off of about 32 colonies, I got 305 gallons last year.
Oh my gosh. Ooh. Wow.
Nice.
Jeez.
305 gallons. How many pounds is that? 3 times.
Come on, Brian. You were doing the math. I saw you looking up.
I tried to do the math and I gave up that quick.
That's probably well over 3,000 pounds just trying to think in my head.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy. So 305 gallons. So that's.
And something I'm working on is getting all my hives more consistent. I've got some colonies that like the chimney up the middle. So I'm trying to get my bees to draw or fill their supers more across. And it seems like I'm seeing a better response to that this year. And I feel like that spring treatment aided with that.
Great question, Matt. Matt's from Houston, Texas, I believe, right, Matt? I met Matt and Sylvia at the Hive Life conference, and great folks. It was great meeting you guys. But do you bottom super or not?
I've done some of both, and I've done some of that this year. I'll do it I won't make a special effort to do it, but if I'm already got them off, like when I was putting the excluders on last week, I'll go ahead and bottom super. But I'd like to get that brood right above the excluders because that's going to emerge in just the next few days, and that gives an immediate place to dump that nectar.
That's
and then
right.
I'll put the empties right on top, and then I'll move the full ones all the way to the top. That's what I've done.
I like to do the same thing. What about if you have foundation? Would you put foundation? Would you bottom super that if you want to draw up some foundation? Like what I mean, if you.
In the past, I've pretty much just always put them on top, and they still draw it. And
I guess a motivated colony will do what they're going to do, right? They'll take care of it.
Exactly. Like those tall hives in that picture, that whole yard right there, my best yard. What I did with them, I put two supers of foundation. I took one super and put 2 frames per super on the way up, and then whatever was left over, I put up on top with some honey. I've done it that way. 2
frames of foundation in the middle.
Yeah. Well,
that's what
3rd frame and 4th frame from the edge, and just alternated it up.
I know that Gus talked about this, and I've tried this a little bit. I've been supering up. I run 9 frames typically on my honey boxes. And so I know that if you want to draw out foundation, it's a good idea to have 10 frames in there because of spacing. And
that's Sebastian.
Oh, Sebastian. Yeah, Sebastian over in the UK. He's stacking them up. But so I put 1 frame in there, just made it 10 frames in those boxes, and literally they have drawn that out and they're putting honey in there like almost immediately. What I've done in the past is I've under supered, if I want to draw out foundation, 10 frames of foundation underneath my honey, and they'll start in the middle and build out, but they don't usually get the outside frames, so I have to rotate them in, but they'll build them out, I think, a little quicker That way you go to 10 frames, they fill those out with honey. When you harvest, you can reduce back down to 9 frames and use some of those and increase your numbers of boxes that way. So another question I have for you, do you use an upper entrance on those colonies?
Well, last year I did because it's the first year I've used a queen excluder, but in years past I have. And then this year I do. Now this is only during the nectar flow time of the year.
Yeah.
And what I do is I go up about 3 supers above the queen excluder, or maybe the 4th above the deep. And I don't know that it's important which one you go, but this seems to work. And I'll slide that super back about 1/2 inch where it exposes the rabbit on the top of the super underneath, but on the back it's still closed off. And you can see in one of my videos, the bees, they'll fan out there, and I feel like it helps them pull a current through there, and they can dry their honey a little more efficiently.
That's a great idea. And
But
there's
if your
no
brood
issues.
nest gets up in there, they'll start using it as an entrance. I've done had that experience.
And it's okay, I think, for them to have an upper entrance too above the excluder, isn't it? If you because they can get back and forth to the honey quicker instead of having to go through that excluder. Do you think they utilize that upper entrance a little bit? I think in mine they seem to.
They do utilize it just a little bit from what I've
I
seen.
actually put a stick in under the lid, and that just opens that corner up a little bit, and they seem to love that. I'm not sure how much they use as an entrance, but I know it can help, like you say, with flow, with regulation of flow through the hive. So I think that's one thing Gus talked about with queen excluders is you should always have an upper entrance of some sort. Plus, if, like you said, if there's any drone comb above that excluder when you put it in, those drones can't get through the excluder, so they'll be trapped in that box unless you have some way for them to get out. That's another reason I like to do that. Another question from Jason here. We've got, how do you replace a queen in a large hive? That is a good question. I would like to know the answer to that as well. What do you do?
To be honest, I don't think I've ever replaced a queen in a large hive. A few years ago, I did run into. Well, I bought some nukes from somebody, and they was very aggressive bees, and it took me 2 or 3 years to get them out by requeening. So I was forced to do some of that then. So I'll try to look for them. One technique I've done that's worked for me is just like set all the boxes apart. If there's 3 or 4 of them, and you don't have a queen excluder, just set them apart and wait a few minutes. And a lot of times they'll tell you which box she's in, and you can search it down. I've kind of used that technique a little bit. But if that don't work, I'll just simply get a shake box and shake each box at a time over a queen excluder and drive them down until I can find her. Yeah, well, I've kind of used several different techniques doing that.
One reason I think that you want to do that is if you want to do a split where you want to find the queen, like Gus talked about, the flyback splits, or if you've got a really nasty hive that's just unworkable or just super aggressive or defensive, you want to find that queen. Sometimes you want to do that, but I have a really hard time, especially if they're dark bees. I just about can't find the queen, and it's exacerbated 100 times if they're in a big colony. I'll look and look and look and never find her sometimes. So those are some great questions. Greg, what do you have? Do you have any techniques for finding a queen in a large colony if you want to find her for whatever reason?
Same thing what Randall would just mention. Of course, there are times where you do want to find her. If you've got a hive that's spicy and there's no other signs other than it might just be a spicy queen and she's got to go, or she's not quite doing her job, or whatever there might be, and it's in a big colony. Just what Randall said is that's the first thing I learned early on, was just to split those boxes out, put a puff of smoke between the boxes, and just wait 10, 15 seconds, and you'll hear exactly which box is quiet, which one's fanning hard. Then you can go through the box. Now you're just looking in the box, and then for the most part you can look down, down through the top bar a lot of times and look and see what frame is that. Is that a honey frame? Is it a pollen frame? Is it a brood frame? And then I always just look quickly for the whitest wax that I can see on the top. That's the frame I pull out, and almost 9 times out of 10, that's where the queen's at, on that fresh wax, laying it up. Unless something's wrong with her and she's not laying, then she could be on a Rumspringa, or she could be anywhere in that box. And then of course you got to go through frame by frame. But I tell you what I did today. I kind of already mentioned it, but I had one of these daughters off of one of Bob Benny's breeders, and they were already had putting on cells. They were already taking away, mama's diet. She was, kind of thinning out, and there was just a boatload of swarm cells just ready to go. I didn't get crazy with it. I split the box, found immediately where she was at. I went ahead and split her off into her own box. I made 6 nukes. right off of that, each one now are going to have just a prime swarm cell from those genetics. For me, a lot of times I would rather this time of year, rather than just requeen that colony for what our goals are, making nukes, making queens, making numbers, I'd rather just take that and just obliterate it, just split it out 6 ways. Now I've got 6 swarm cells, all from those just prime genetics, swarm cell. That's kind of how I do it. I rarely get into a situation where I have to go in and actually requeen anything out of a large hive, but that's primarily because we're not running for honey. So maybe there's a huge difference, I think, in how you do that based on what your context is.
Randall, question for you from Cayman. Thanks for joining tonight, Cayman. For being on the chat tonight. When do you split the most?
I've tried different months, all the way ranging from April to August, early August, but I judge this based on what happens the following year. For me, the best time seems to be anytime in June or the first half of July, and those splits are they usually the queen gets into motion or whatever, gets enough build up, enough pheromone going, and the next spring they usually make really good colonies. For example, I have done it during my no treatment years. I've done this a lot. Overwinter in a 5-frame nuke from a split. And of course, I obviously have plenty of dead out drawn comb to use the following spring. So in the middle of March, I'll take those 5-frame nukes and put them in 10-frame with 5 empty drawn outs and get 4 to 6 supers off of them. And it works beautifully. So that's the time of the year. And the queens are just simply a lot better. To me, the early queens, I've had bad luck with mid-late March queens. So I won't even hardly look at them anymore.
Okay.
That's when I do the most. I try to do June to July on splits.
Okay. I mean, I just kind of start when I can, and I've had some tremendous queens. Actually, we're like I said, a little south of you. By then, when our honey flows over, the nectar flows down some. It seems like our drone population goes down some, and so now if you got bees on cotton down here and they're blowing it out, you can. I had a friend, Tyler, the commercial guy down there, down there. He has bees up here in Alabama and in Florida. He's the guy that we did the pollination stuff with, but he was doing splits like in September, October on cotton and goldenrod and just sticking cells in there and just had some amazing queens out of it. So really the flow, I think, has a lot to do with it. And if they're in a build mode, if they're build up mode, they'll start to make drones again if they have a flow coming in. The bees just, there's triggers that cause them to do that. So here's a question. I think that Jason wanted a little clarification. I guess he said, how do you requeen a large hive? I think that's a follow-up to his how do you find the queen. The reason why I ask is I keep hearing it's nearly impossible to do. What do you think? Do you think it's impossible to do that or very difficult to requeen a large hive? I personally think I've
What's a large hive, I guess?
I'll just throw it out there. Maybe just like in one of these production colonies, you got like at least a deep or a double deep type situation, when we're, I don't
so not an 8-foot tall honey behemoth.
I mean, I guess it could be that, but I would say
the question
maybe,
is how to get the boxes off.
Yeah, maybe a double deep brood area. Just to say a double deep brood box. How would you requeen that? Have you had issues trying to do that? I mean, if you said you haven't done a lot of that, but if you were to try and requeen a large hive, do you think there'd be an issue with that? With the bees?
I struggled mightily with queen introduction my first 2 or 3 years, so I had to figure it out on my own. But I would pull some frames of cap brood and attached house bees. I probably would shake the bees down, put it screwed on 3 or 4 frames of that, and bring them up and put them in a nuke, introduce that queen to them, let her lay 2 or 3 weeks, and then come back. And once her pheromones got settled in and her confidence become good, then I would kill that old queen and just introduce that nuke back into it. Is the way I would do it.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I've had pretty good success. It's interesting. Last year I bought some. I had a colony from a queen producer that was just nasty defensive. They didn't bother you until you cracked the lid, but as soon as you did, they chased you around the yard till you left. And so I would say them till last. And it was probably a deep and a medium. They were actually with me. I moved them away from my mom's farm, put them out there on that cotton, and that hive ended up going to California with the pollination. But I requeened them with the Lappy's Italian queen late in the season, like late August. And I found that queen in there. I thought since they were kind of mean bees, they would be more likely to kill that new queen, but they accepted her and she just took off and did it. That was one of my stronger colonies leaving for pollination. They just went nuts. And so I don't know. I'm not sure really. That's a great question, Jason. I'm not sure if I really have a great answer for you, but that's kind of, I haven't done a lot of that either, but when I have, I've had decent, I think, acceptance rate on those.
Do you guys take away their opportunities? Do you pull a queen and then let them go 3 to 5 days and then go through the colony, cut down the cells, and they have no option? You guys try that?
I think that's the best way to go. That's how I introduced the
do.
queens to my splits this year with when I introduced Jose's and Josh Ray's queens from down in the Panhandle of Florida. I put about 20 plus of each of theirs, and I did that. And the ones where I it was getting dark one evening, I missed some of those cells, and then they will absolutely keep their cells over that new queen. I found on some of those from Josh, I kind of screwed up, but I did want to give a shout out to Jose, the California beekeeper. Great service, great customer service, and I think you got some queens from him today, didn't you, Brian, or in the last couple of days?
Yesterday.
Tuesday. You've introduced them already. Have you already got them in the hives and you've made your splits? So I saw your picture.
I did my splits earlier Monday. So I think it went about 28 to 30 hours. And when I introduced them, and those rascals already had little teeny cups in that they were building out, and it was that quick. So just went through and smushed them, and it was funny because once I did that, and you can tell how they act too, because I set those queens that Jose sent on there, and them girls were just up there fanning on them, and they were loving on them cages. So
I had his stuff is doing well. I also put some cells from Josh Ray in Quincy, Florida, Bear Creek apiaries. He's a guy that's not too far from me, probably about an hour from here, maybe an hour and a half. And I've been trying to get a hold of some of his queens for a while, but he kind of got me out of a crunch because I made those 44 splits and then I'd only ordered 20 queens from Jose. So I was in a bind, and he pulled through for me at the end. But I'm going to show you, this is one of his. The other day we were stacking some honey supers on. This is if you can see this brood pattern. Y'all see that? Oh, come on, focus.
Here, I'm gonna make you.
There it is, right there. See that brood pattern?
Wow.
It's not very well focused, but
anyway, that looks impressive.
It's just a total frame of brood right there, and so it is really, really nice. And so if you live, I don't know if Josh does a lot of shipping queens, but if you live anywhere close to Quincy, Florida, Josh is good. He actually met my wife in Mariana, which is about halfway in between, that day that I introduced those queens. And he's a great guy. Bear Creek Apiaries, you can find him under Josh Ray on Facebook, or Bear Creek Apiaries in Quincy, Florida. And I've been impressed, and they're gentle. They're I think carniolans I think they're made with Italians is what they're trying to do there. And so anyway, I've been trying to get hold of some of his queens for years. He hasn't had enough, but he pulled through for me. And Jose's queens, I've been impressed with them as well so far. Now, I introduced them on the 12th and 13th of April. And so, they're a month. We're not even a month in yet. So we'll see how it goes moving forward. But so far, I've been real happy with customer service and the production of both of those queen breeders. Mm-hmm. And I look forward to trying some of yours, Greg. Hopefully, whenever you get them to me, I've got some ordered, and I'm looking forward to trying those things out. It'll be awesome. So we have been going for 2 hours and 20 minutes. We have
an hour and a half.
We have 121 people, 122 people watching right now. And it's like, so I just am curious, and I see Conan on there, Jeremy sees Conan and Sons. I've got some from them in the past that have been good. I really liked their carniolans that I got from them years ago from out in California. They're out there in Jose's backyard, I think. He actually, he's kind of out there in that same area where Conan is, and so he's, there's a lot of really good queen breeders right there in that area of California. But so it's just it's almost a joke for us. I just wonder, we kind of laugh about how, as we're ready to start winding this thing down, the volume of viewers goes up every time. It seems like it's crazy. And so someone just says a max of 128 earlier, and we're at 124 right now. And so that's crazy. But if you have any final questions for us, let us know. we'd like to answer them real quick. I did have a comment I wanted to mention. I do appreciate everyone coming on here. Once again, please go check out Randall's channel at Carter Hill Honeybees, Randall Carter at Randall Carter Hill Honeybees on YouTube. Also check out Greg's channel, Nature's Image Farm, and Brian at Castle Hives. And my channel is
Bruce's Bees.
all one word.
All one word.
And a lot of people say Bruce Bees, but it's Bruce's Bees. A lot of people leave that S out, and I'm not sure with that name, but it works out okay. So we appreciate that. Final words of wisdom. Start off with you, Greg. Any words of wisdom or any thoughts you have on this chat tonight? Anything you'd like to add here at the end in conclusion?
Well, I think a lot of us are in that in a place where we're trying to grow. We find ourselves, trying to push it year after year. I think as we all dig in and try to do that work, it's important to take a little bit of time, spend some time in that thinking chair, give yourself the opportunity to just remove the you out of yourself and just focus, spend some time thinking, and give yourself the opportunity to make those good choices as you take those steps moving forward. When you get out there and you're not sure what you're looking at, you don't know what to do next, don't be shy to ask for some help, to get some answers. Be that lighthouse to somebody else. There's always been someone that's been a lighthouse to me, to all of us. Sometimes it's going to be up to you to be a lighthouse to somebody else, to pick up that call, to answer, to help somebody else out. So I would just encourage folks to, take this time right now, depending on where you're at in the country. This is prime time for a lot of us. So just be mindful that it's taxing physically and mentally. Just take the time to take care of yourself, because that's going to put you in a way better place to take care of the bees. And as always, Bruce, be the lighthouse and be the change that you want to see in this world.
Brian, what you got for us, man? Words of wisdom, final thoughts.
Man, I following up that, one thing that I'll just say, everybody knows my situation that I was in last year, early in the year, and it was that humbling moment in beekeeping. But you live and learn. I took that opportunity, and the opportunity was losing every one of my colonies. I saw that as an opportunity, and I was able to step back, look at what I had been doing, and I used that entire situation as a learning experience. And now look where I'm at 1 year later, and I don't think in my years of beekeeping here, I've never quite expanded as fast now as what I have in the last 3 weeks, and it's just, I took that opportunity last year to just learn and grow. So beekeeping, we're going to have those ups and downs, those roller coasters. Use those situations and those, if you've had a just very poor day, like Greg said, we're all here to lift each other up. We're all here to move forward. We're all here to learn together. But like I did last year, I leaned on other people. I was able to gain, knowledge. Russell, I saw him say earlier, that wisdom. And, where I'm at right now this year, I'm smiling. So that's all I'm going to say.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for the input. Randall, words of wisdom, man. Any words of wisdom you'd have for us?
Well, I would kind of like to thank everybody that produces videos on YouTube. I discovered this phenomenon about 2 years ago, and I have learned far more in the last 2 years than I have the previous 13 combined. And I just can't thank the good folks enough that puts this information out. Because when I started, I had to learn. It was hard to find good information. The learning curve kind of plateaued in 2 or 3 years, and then I just went to have just trial and error, and it takes so much longer when you have to do it that way. So I'm just so thankful and grateful for the people. And if you're out there and you're struggling with them, just don't give up. I didn't give up back then. I just kept at it, and I wasn't going to let it defeat me. And then here in recent years, I found all this new good information, and it's completely turned my operation around. And I had decent bits of information going, but now I'm filling in those segments and gaps of information with even more that's making my whole operation better. So I want to thank all the people out there that produce videos. And the most important thing is to never stop learning.
That's right.
That's
You
it.
say that in your videos, don't you, Randall? That's one of your.
Yes, sir.
Greg talks about be the lighthouse. You never stop learning, and that is something I think that we all need to realize. I mean, I've run into different types of people, not just in beekeeping, but in my life that just know everything. I mean, that they know, and there are a lot of real knowledgeable people out there, but there's always something to learn, no matter how many colonies you've had. If you're a big commercial guy with thousands and thousands and thousands of colonies, or if you're a backyard person with a couple, or even one colony, or just a brand new swarm you caught, there's always something to learn. And even if it's a lot about the bees and what you want to do, even there's business opportunities, different things you can learn. You can always grow. Randall was just talking to me about some editing stuff the other day, and just always something to learn, man, about the YouTube scene, the beekeeping scene, and just life in general. So great words to the wise, Randall. We really appreciate your time. You got so much more knowledge. Maybe someday down the road we can have you on again and kind of do this again down the road. So that would be awesome. I'd like to say, everyone, if you would please just go after you're done with this sometime the next day or two, if you haven't already, go check out Randall's channel, watch a couple of videos, and if you like what you see, please subscribe, like the videos, do what you need to do there. I hesitate to tell people just to subscribe to channels, because if you're not going to watch it on my channel, if you're not going to watch the videos, then number of subscribers is important, but it's not the most important thing. It's actually watching them and gaining that knowledge. I think, Randall, you'd agree with that. I mean, we want people to kind of tune in and subscribe, and hopefully we can help you out and entertain you and help you learn some things. And so check some of the stuff out. I think you'll subscribe. I know you can learn a lot. I've learned a lot in just the videos I've watched from Randall, and it's got some impressive knowledge as well as a bunch of the other people we've had on this chat. So, Randall, right now, anytime you have a question for Brian or Greg or me or a lot of these folks in this chat right here, don't hesitate to reach out. Greg's got a lot of great knowledge. He's got a lot of products available through his business up there, what he's trying to do. Brian is awesome with the bees, awesome with technology, a great friend. These two guys have become great friends of mine. And of course, I'm here for you. If you need anything from me, I can help you out with. Don't hesitate to give me a call. You got my phone number. You got my email address. You can text me, call me, whatever. We'll see if we can help you out in whatever way possible. Once again, appreciate everyone. We're about to wrap this thing up. And it's just been so much fun. And we've been on here for 2.5 hours. We could go longer, but I know it's getting late for a lot of folks. So we're going to go ahead and shut this thing out. And as I always say on my videos, y'all take care, be safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.